I always want a drink of coffee as he's fading in, and then I have to time it. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Colecast. I have had a year off to remember the name of our podcast. I know that it's season 3. I don't know that we're continuing with the seasons, but this would be season 3, episode 1. Obviously, since we've taken such a long break. In that time, has it been a year, producer Evan? It's been about a year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's been about a year. In that time, we have had some moves, some shakes, some changes. So I'm going to take a little bit of time and I'm going to go over some of that. And then we are going to introduce a familiar face to us at this point, a familiar face to many of you via Instagram and Blade Show and other trade shows, but is potentially a new face for you guys to experience as a Coal Ironworks face. So in the past year, I don't know when we last recorded. So going over what happened last year, I think we started out, we started out with the second annual Hammer-In. I know that's in December, but that would have been in December of 2023. We had a great turnout. I don't know that we got to cover that. What those demos would have been: Will Stelzer, Andrew Larson, and Rob Huff. Derek Melton also, yes. And then who was the fourth? I feel terrible. I feel absolutely awful about this. Was there one? Was there? I don't even think there might not have been one.
No, there certainly was.
Anyway, that was a wonderful, wonderful Hammer-In that went way too long, specifically because Will Stelzer. We're going to blame it on him, whether it's his fault or not. So, also, I think I just nailed his last name for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
But wonderful Hammer-In. We realized keeping people here until 10 o'clock at night was not a good thing. We did make the update that year to go from Saturday and Sunday to Friday and Saturday, which was
Mark and Dale Winburn. I didn't remember them because it mixed in with the couple of classes they've taught. Yeah, it was kind of back to back.
Yeah, they were right up here right after. So anywho, so that was a great time. We appreciate anybody that came out to that. Once again, if we've already covered this, I apologize.
The last podcast.
You're supposed to be a secret.
Hi. It's me.
All right, flashback. You're ruining the aura, the ambiance.
Uh-huh.
Let me recollect.
Only to correct you. The last podcast was right after Blade Show because it was Stelzer and
and Jackson.
Rumble.
Yeah. It was. Once again, Will Stelzer ruined the podcast. He just went too long. You know, he ruins Hammer-Ins. He ruins podcasts. But back on track. I'm going to reintroduce you later so everybody acts shocked. Send in reactions. We'll talk more about sending stuff in later. We're going to be a little bit more involved in the podcast, but we'll cover that. So I think the next thing that we did in 2024 was I went to California to do the CBA event. Apparently, we might have already covered this, so I'll start going fast. CBA event was awesome. I got stuck between two great, fantastic, amazing human beings who also happen to make wonderful, awesome knives, Kelly and Mike. And then on the other side of me, they were doing a large-scale ornamental piece, which by ornamental, it was halfway between like structural and a sculpture, I think, based off of just what I was doing. They were too busy to answer any questions I had. And I had a fantastic time out there. And then after that, so that would have been April. After that would be Blade Show and Abana, which happened on the same weekend this year. And I went out to that alone. Evan and to Abana, Evan and our mystery guest and Logan went to Blade Show. And they had a fantastic time. Went down and visited Lucas O'Hare, who is also a wonderful human being. We're going to do a lot of shout outs on this podcast because we've made a lot of friends. We've seen a lot of old friends. While I was at Abana, I got to see Derek Melton make the first hammer on a Coal Ironworks 25 kilowatt induction forge. We got to hang out with a lot of cool cool like heritage makers, like guys that have been doing it since the 60s and the 70s, and got a lot of it one-on-one with really cool guys like Wally Yater and Jack Brubaker and Kurt, who came out. Obviously, we see him a lot more than the other guys, but I got to spend almost a full week with Kurt, which was awesome. And Rob and all those guys made it a terrific time, and Noah and Corbin. So I don't have a lot to say about Blade Show because I wasn't there, but every customer that I've talked to and every comment that I've seen has been pretty positive. We were able to take a 25 kilowatt out there too, I believe, right? No? Our producer's not paying attention.
No, I just don't remember. There was definitely a 5 on the machine.
Forge.
There was an induction forge. But then after we came home from that, we launched the 25 kilowatt within probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I believe. And we had a lot of people had questions. Anytime you launch a new product, you have early adopters, you have people who have maybe an older style of machine. Say they, when we launched the 60, they had a 12 ton, they kind of knew how it worked, but had questions. And sales were doing okay. And then we put out a video of our good friend, Brett, making crucible steel. And since then, that video has blown up and induction forges have blown up. And
not literally.
Not literally. Well, we did when we were testing them, intentionally blew them up, and that is both terrifying and invigorating. So, it's something. There's like a lot of bass in this headphone, or something is shaking the ground. I can't tell.
Yeah, no, I'm getting that too. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. So, anyhoozle, I wanted to first off say thank you to everybody that's bought an induction forge, everybody that has supported us with giving us feedback. That's been one of the most unexpected benefits of our community, of our customers, of what you guys are doing. Is I get emails and phone calls that aren't problems. People that email me or give me a phone call that say, hey, this is revolutionize what I'm doing in the shop. Thank you so much. If anybody else is doing this process that I'm doing, let me explain it to you. And here are some tips to walk them through how to make the induction forge better for their application. I am by no means a smart person when it comes to process engineering, when it comes to induction forges, how they work. I am terrified of electricity. So I am by all means the worst person to have this job. So when customers give me solutions that they have figured out themselves and they share that open knowledge, it's absolutely wonderful. So everybody that's done that, thank you so much. And people that have had issues, thank you, because that just lets us know if we have reoccurring problems that we're doing something wrong and we need to fix it. So thank you so much for the feedback, for the continued support. So those blew up. Those were a good chunk of our back end of our year in sales. We also gained a lot of steam with the H frames. So the modular H frame setup, you can have a 16 ton, 5 horsepower, 10 horsepower, 2 horsepower, all the way up to 60, and you can vary it all the way through. We don't offer the 60 on a 2 horsepower power pack because none of you would have time to actually forge. It would just move so slow that you would spend too much time waiting to switch into second.
Not enough oil in it to power it, right?
The 5 gallons would probably fill 2. Yeah. Yeah. I would think so. I'm not a math nerd. Call Logan.
Yeah, that's a Logan.
But the only problem with it is that it's incredibly slow. So we gained a lot of steam with those. In fact, there was a week where I think it was a week or 2 weeks back to back, we sold like 6 60 tons, which is kind of like our premier, like upper echelon, like bad boy unit. And that was also during a time when Evan, Logan, and Nathan were all out of the building. I had just lost 3 very vital members of my staff, all to, they moved on to great jobs that were more comfortable for their living situation. So I was trying to take my time to replace them, and then just, 3 men down on the floor and then 3 men down on the office. and that was chaos. So I got an intern. As many of you guys know, Corbin, our safety guy's son, has been around forging with us. He has really clung on to the guys at the IBA, and one of the few kids that actually takes feedback and uses it. He doesn't just continue doing it his way. So we got him in. He started working in assembly, took a little heat off my shoulders.
He doesn't listen to this, does he?
I hope not.
Okay.
We don't say nice things in front of him.
No, we can't.
Then we hired another young man named Landon that he came from a background, and this is the most perfect thing. If you work in anything that has an assembly cell, any manufacturing process that has an assembly cell, if you have somebody who has a background in cell phone towers and Legos, hire them. Pay them more than the last guy that you had in the cell, because those two skills combined is assembly. like everything that we asked him, he would not only like, oh, okay, I understand that, but why does it have to be that size? Okay, I understand that. So if this power pack were to use this other motor, what would happen? And he was very detail oriented, which gave him a lot of insight to not have to come and grab me and ask questions later, because he already had a bigger picture. So Landon fit in really well. But when I had initially lost my 3 employees, I had reached out to a very old friend of mine, actually one of Andy's best friends growing up as little wee young lads, and a friend of Nathan's for a long time. His name's Greg. He's been around. If you guys have been to the Hammer in any of the years, you would have seen Greg coming in and helping us while we were developing the Power Hammer. He was giving us kind of insight onto some things that we were a little bit more unfamiliar with, the way things work mechanically, because he's a master mechanic. And he ended up accepting our job offer. It just took him about 4 or 5 months to hire in. So once he came in, he's my head assembly manager, whatever you want to call him. And then Landon was moved over to paint and ship. And he also does some of the induction forge building, some of the die weld. So we've had a lot of changes in the shop, but I am very proud to announce that we are back up and running. Lead times are getting shortened by a little bit. We were up to about 6 weeks, and now we're down to about 3. The goal is to do 2 weeks. That is my ultimate goal, is to get it back down to 2 weeks, which the last time we were at 2 weeks, we were prefabbing presses and everything was just, what color do you want? So some things have changed, but we're back in the saddle. As far as the podcast goes, we have plans of recording every single week. I will be a pretty good mainstay. Nathan will be a pretty good mainstay, and then we will also have kind of revolving doors of co-hosts. It'll never be one person like that Theo Vaughn. Every once in a while, he just does like individual podcasts where he rambles to himself. Those are weird. You have to be the right personality to do that, and I'm not. So, anywho, we're trying to stay active. We are going to be doing some tag us in what you're making. We are going to be doing some write-in questions for some of these industry veterans that we have that graciously spend their time with us. You'll be able to write in questions and get responses. We're talking to a couple guys that would be involved with that, and I don't want to share names in case they decide not to, but I'm really excited about 2 of them in particular. But yeah, so if you guys listen to the podcast in the past, I'm doing a terrible job at looking at the camera. If you guys have listened to the podcast in the past and you've stayed up to date with us and you've reached out and said, hey, I love your podcast, where are you guys at? Thank you for giving us that feedback. We are going to try our best to be more consistent, and we do now see the value because we quit doing it and people kept asking for it. The meeting that we brought it up and bringing back, I, no kidding you, within 20 minutes got a instant message on our website and a phone call specifically asking about the podcast. So I don't know if you guys out there believe in fate or destiny or God or whatever you want to call it, but the stars aligned and you guys got your wish. So hold us accountable. If an episode is late, email Evan at producerevan@colecast.com. But all terrible. That was a bad joke. But all terrible jokes aside, we are trying to stay more up to date, stay involved. And because of that, we'll have segments. We'll have kind of different things going on. But for this very first episode, I want to give you guys updates on what we're doing in the shop currently, where we're going. It's kind of some different aspects. And one of the big aspects that we've added to Cole Ironworks in the past year has been we have really focused on our school. We opened up a school 2-3 years ago, and we have let it run itself with some help from Evan, with some help from Nathan. I've been very, very mildly involved. Logan's been very mildly involved. And we hired a full-time instructor. And this super secret guest has been sitting next to me this entire time. And so we are going to take some time to talk about what Charlie walked into, what he's done to fix the school. It was broken. And what we're looking forward to moving in the future, maybe some upcoming classes. I know we have a few classes that were heavily requested that we finally got booked and we got dates for. So, first of all, I know we did a podcast for you when you came and taught at our school, but
I came to visit. Yeah.
Yeah. In case anybody hasn't listened or kept up to date with that podcast and they're new to this, give me a brief introduction of who Charlie Ellis is, what you do outside of, we'll get to the school and all that, but give me a brief rundown of who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So I'm a knife maker, and I make Damascus, and I make kitchen knives. And I was living in North Carolina for most of my life. I grew up in Florida, but moved to North Carolina when I was 16. So when I moved there, we looked into where to learn to blacksmith and stuff. And there was a community college there that had continuing ed classes.
I thought you were going to say katana classes. I was like, wow, you just jumped into katanas. All right.
Yeah, so that's where I got my start, is at that school learning. And then from there, I took a job for an architectural blacksmith working for him, and that's where I learned to arc weld and machine and lay out picket spacing and doing different jigs and fixtures for them. And all this time I'm working on my own knives and trying to make a living doing that. And eventually it was to the point where I had to either find a different job or go full time into making knives, and decided that I got to just go for it and see what happens. So it was pretty squeaking by for a couple of years, but we made it happen, and it was really cool being able to just focus solely on making knives and not be jumping between stuff. Oh man, I need to update my website.
Yeah, you got blurry pictures, brother.
No, it was just loading.
It was buffering. I know.
Just the work is old. But yeah, that's basically it.
Okay.
Came up here a year ago to check out the place. I heard from old Seltzer that you guys were looking for someone to run the school. And that was at Jason Knight was teaching.
Was it the pizza cutter class?
Yeah, Will was teaching a pizza cutter class at Jason Knight's place, and I lived an hour and a half south of Jason. So anytime he's got someone cool up there, I'll come visit. Give myself an excuse to crash.
Yeah.
Crash the party.
Was that the first time? I know that we had talked at Blade Show a couple times, and I had known who you are by face recognition, just kind of in passing. Was that the first time that you had spent time with Nathan, though? Was at that class, or were you guys friendly?
Yeah, we were a little friendly. I met him like 10 years ago at Nate Runel's hammering.
Yeah.
Because a buddy of mine was going up to Michigan to buy a Beaudry. And he was like, want to come with me? It's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sounds like a fun road trip. And I contacted David to see, because I knew he was, more or less in the area. It's like, oh, I'm out of town this weekend, but I'm in Michigan at Nate Runel's shop. He's doing a hammer, and you guys can come to that. Yeah, sure. So I met Nate there, and I remember he was talking about rolling rings for that Hershey's job.
Nestle.
Yeah. Nestle? I thought it was Hershey.
Nestle.
Okay. Well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That was the worst.
That was a long time ago. That was before.
That was pre-Coal Ironworks.
Yeah.
Like, technically pre-Coal Ironworks, but that was the beginning of Nate and Andy working together.
Mm. Yeah. So, yeah, I met him there, and then, I knew him from Coal getting running and the presses, and met him at Blade Show once or twice.
Yeah.
But yeah, at that pizza cutter class, Nate went to that class too, so I was talking with him and just getting info about the school. It's like, oh man, that sounds like a really cool opportunity. My wife would hate moving to Indiana, but
little colder.
It sounds like a good job for somebody. So I just, mentioned to my wife just to see, we'll see. She was like, oh, what? You'll get paid every week? We don't have to wait a month between knife sales?
Yeah.
So, yeah, she was on board. I got more information after. I was like, oh, it might actually, she's up for moving. So
yeah.
I got more information. I came up to visit and kind of interviewed for the job, sort of.
Yeah, very, very much.
It was like, Nathan was like, yeah, I mean, we want you to work here,
Yeah.
Just getting information about, ins and outs and particulars. So.
Yeah, I think when you hire for somebody with your position, you had come and taught a class. It was that one-on-one class that you did with Lynn.
Yes.
I knew it was an old blacksmith's name. Lynn. And so we knew that you were able to convey information and in a digestible way. That's the number one drawback or issue that you typically have with people with very, very high abilities is they're not able to bring it down to a digestible level. So Wayne Gretzky's the greatest hockey player of all time. He went like 15 and 35 or something like that as a head coach, because for him, he's like, okay, you just take it between the legs, you take it and you dump it and then you're out. And his players are like, what? And it comes natural to a lot of people. So having somebody that is as high level as you are, as far as your execution, your attention to detail, what your expectations are, and then be able to also make that digestible for somebody who's only made knives for a couple of years, or even teaching an entry-level class where my nephew and your son have gotten together and done some blacksmithing, and you're able to say, very easily for them to understand what they're doing. We kind of saw that and we understood that. Your interview process was more like, is Charlie going to fit in? Because the scariest thing in the world, as somebody who has moved places for jobs, is to go work somewhere and you don't like anybody, or they don't like you. So one of the things that Nathan and I kind of talked about, and Evan might have been involved in the conversations as well, was like, not only are you very highly skilled and talented, not just in knife making, but you're also an incredibly talented machinist. You have a mind that works in a way that creates a process as you're building out what you're dreaming. Usually you make your dream and then you figure out like, okay, what do I need to do to repeat this? I did it the first time. How do I make it repeatable? And it seems like every time you make something, the first time you have a bunch of things that helped you get there. So, but you also were able to make it digestible. And then as we're talking about these things, it's like, okay, like he is the perfect fit in every manner. Have we spent like a lot of time around Charlie? Like, is Charlie going to fit in? And all of us were like, yeah, he's just kind of quiet. We're all loud, even producer Evan, who doesn't like to be on screen and pretends like he's quiet, soft. He's loud. He's verbose. Nathan is very verbose. I have to compensate for Nathan. I have to speak over him sometimes. Logan has no problem sharing his opinion. That's kind of his job, is to make sure everybody knows from a technical aspect that his opinion matters, right? Even when you get out onto the floor, we're all very loud. And then we have poor Charlie, who's completely okay with silence and is reflective through the entire conversation. And that was kind of our one, like, well, he'll either have to figure it out or he's really going to hate working here. But within, 2 or 3 weeks, it was like, oh, like, you fit so well. Not everybody needs to be screaming all the time. Sometimes you need the guy that's a little bit quieter that we all have to look to and say, okay, he's got something to say. But when you came to work here, that was our one kind of like, I know he's going to be able to do the job. I don't want him to feel isolated. I don't want him to feel like, nobody ever wants to feel like they're on an island. So I'm very glad. And maybe you're in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, these guys suck. I hate them.
No.
But I for one am very glad, not just for you coming in and being able to be such an asset to the school. And while everybody was gone, Charlie would come to me and say, what do you need done today? And I would be able to give him small projects. And at the end of every day, I would have to be like, Charlie, like, you're the reason I didn't lose my crap today. Like, you are keeping me sane. All the little things that I can't get done throughout the day, Charlie would either just do it or he would come ask me if, hey, do you need help with that? So Charlie was immediately a huge impact from that avenue. And I can't get over like praising you enough for the asset that you've become. But I am also very, very happy for the person that you've come and the dynamic that you've added to the shop from a human aspect, from just a personality point of view. You've also given my nephew a best friend. So they are, every time I see him, he's like, well, why didn't you bring Charlie? Where's he at? Probably at home. I don't know. I thought you worked with. I think he's confused on the difference between working with somebody and living with somebody, maybe. Because when I have him and I bring him here and he sees you here, he's like, okay, so they live at Cole and they just hang out.
Well, it's like I think he's still at the age where he thinks his teachers live at the school.
Yeah, yeah, they sleep under the desk. I never thought the teachers slept under the desk. So in my school, we ate in the gym, and then there was like a stage kind of thing. I don't know why there was a stage in the gym, but the teacher's break room was behind that. So I always thought that at the end of the night, they would go close the curtains and roll out beds, and all the teachers slept like I Love Lucy style with like 3 beds in a row, and them all just saying like good night and good night, and then they woke up and rolled them away. But anywho, that's something that didn't need to be shared on the podcast. All right, so you came. We figured out that you were a great asset. You took over some of the pre-existing, what was already scheduled, what was expected, and you just kind of picked up. What are some of the changes that you immediately had to make to the school that were like, oh, this is an obvious one?
Just bunch of little stuff, just moving stuff around and organizing and setting stuff up properly.
So pretty easy stuff.
Yeah, but just
see, Evan, if you would have done your job, we wouldn't have had to hire Charlie.
Okay.
No, but just like, this belt grinder, this bolt's a little loose on it, or this bolt's too tight and it won't track properly. Mm-hmm. And just, stuff that you don't catch unless you're back there using the stuff and running it and paying attention.
Right, yeah, we had
spending the time.
Like all of the grinders needed something. And when you started working on them, I think it was Josh. Josh is back there quite a bit, but it's like, oh, like Charlie's, redoing all the grinders. And he's like, yeah, that's why I only use this one. I only use that one because all the other ones, and it's like, geez, why didn't you ever tell me? Like, he's like, well, that one always worked, but these other ones kind of were a little funky. Oh, okay. I've gotten that feedback from a lot of the guys who go back there. They're like, well, I used to not be able to use this cell, but now I can use it because, the slide bronze on this press always came out. And it's like, why wasn't that shared? And it's because There was no like official, like this is the guy to go to for the school, you know? So that's in and of itself has been huge, is having a point where it's like a point of communication where if something's going on in the school, you know about it and everybody knows that you need to be the one to know about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. Yeah. And ran some more power to set up a welder, and that chop saw back there, I fixed that up and got the clamps working properly on it. Just lots of little things that needed a little TLC, you know.
Yeah, needed somebody who could give it the attention that was appropriate. You know, Nathan had his 5th kid. Evan got married, and I got absorbed by. At one point, I was building, painting, and shipping the presses. So that's usually 4 different people. Somebody's building the power pack, somebody's doing final assembly, somebody's painting, and somebody's shipping, and I'm kind of jumping through and overseeing all of them. And then, you know, so everything got left to the wayside. And, you know, I kind of joked about it earlier when it was like, you know, we left it in ruin for you and you had to fix everything. But it kind of was, you know, that wasn't the standard that we kept the school up to until we kind of hit critical mass with the situation we were in. But there is a lot of stuff that you did that was needed to be done from the time we opened the school. Like you said, like, why don't we have a welder in the school? That's low hanging fruit. We have a chop saw. It's terrifying to use. And it took you a few hours to fix, you know, and I still won't use it, just so everybody knows. But having somebody back there just to dedicate the time to is huge, monumental for not only the way the school operates, but also the customer experience. When they pay a lot of money to come and take a class, and it's better to have no chop saw than have a chop saw with a sign that says "do not use." You know, because then it's like, well, these guys aren't really keeping up with anything. What about their presses? And it's like, what about this or what about that? And so having somebody back there that, and I've seen you do this, like, this doesn't work. It doesn't need to be in the school. We'll wheel it away until I can get it to work. That's huge. So, yeah. What do you think your like number one impact has been in the school so far?
Just being a body back there. Just, you know, getting things running and being the face of the school and helping set up classes, you know, getting people to come to teach classes that are buddies of mine, you know, that I want them to come and hang out with me and teach a class, you know, and they want to come hang out too and teach a class. So,
yeah, that's, I can think of 2 instructors off the top of my head that we invited purely because we wanted to hang out with them. And also, Black Bear, we want you to come teach. Black Bear, Papaw John, please. We want you to come teach.
Do you know his name?
John Schweitzer?
Yeah, that was close enough. I was just making sure.
I thought this was like a trick question.
It was.
Where you were going to be like, actually, that's just his persona. He doesn't share his real name on the internet. And then I would feel bad. But yes, like there's a bunch of people that we've wanted to come out and teach just because we thought they were cool. Like we kind of a little bit had a relationship with Jason beforehand. But when we first opened the school, it was like, we want Jason to come out because Jason's cool. You know, having somebody like Will come out, we like Will. We're friends with Will. Also, if Will can come out and make a vacation out of teaching a class and he can be an asset to our classroom and we can be an asset by paying him to teach, like that's a win-win all around. And I noticed that when you guys were laying your schedule out for this year was like there was a lot of guys that I was like, oh, I haven't thought about him in a while. You know, like I met him at Blade Show or I met him at David's Hammer-Ins back in 2011 or 2012. And like, you know, one of them, be prepared to edit this out if it's not real. Like Robert Burns coming and teaching, you know, like he's somebody that I met at one of my very first Hammer-Ins and he was he was there and then he was gone, you know, whereas like Nate and a few like not Nate Runnels and David and Andy and Nathan took me initially, but they kind of stuck around. And then you have the guys like Robert, who I met him once. I have a very funny story about him that I don't know if I can share on the podcast. But he had just gotten married and we hit him in a place you don't want to be hit right after you get married with a sledgehammer that we had all yelled at Nathan about a loose head on.
Oh man, I bet I could find that picture.
Yeah.
That pocket knife that was pictured on my website, that was a collab I did with Robert.
Okay.
He made that steel and I made the.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that he's not prolific on Instagram, but he's found his niche. He sells to his customers. He's a great knife maker. And because I'm an idiot and my Instagram only shows me popular pages, I just haven't thought about him, you know? And then when I saw that name written down, it was like, oh, this is going to be cool. You know, he's super nice guy. I guess he was 10 years ago. He might be jaded and angry now. I don't know, but super cool guy, very nice, very down to earth, willing to sit and talk for 3 hours if it helps you in any way. But seeing names like that was really cool because we always talk about our community and the community of blacksmiths, the community of bladesmiths, and even other machine builders. And it's like we always talk about this community, and then we get a school and we're inviting big names out to come out. And not that we're trying to like name drop or anything like that, but it's like, why not have Robert come out and teach a class? Why not have Brett come out and teach a class? Why not have these guys that are part of our community that we go to when we have questions where they're semi-mentoring us anyway? Why not bring out the guys that we look up to? And so that I thought that was something that was really cool about looking at the schedule. And it was filled. There's something going on all the time. And B, it was guys that it's like, oh, I didn't know he teaches. We should have thought about that when we first opened the schools. We have all these amazing connections and we never really utilized them.
Yeah.
I didn't really give you a talking point to follow that up with. I'm sorry. But anyway, yeah, you can continue with your point of coming in and being able to help with scheduling and get the guys out that you wanted to hang out with.
Yeah.
I'm bad about that. I'm sorry.
You didn't talk about Emiliano Carrillo and Ben Snur.
I haven't seen the full schedule.
Oh,
we'll cover what's coming up. I haven't seen the full schedule. I know about Ben obviously because we have that scheduled, and a lot of people have had questions. I know Robert. You said Emiliano. We have Benton Frizzy. Yeah, like I said, we'll go over the schedule and we'll let you plug all the stuff that's already kind of set in stone and whatnot. And then maybe even tease a few. It's your school, not mine, so you can do whatever you want. But yeah, so you were saying that you were able to come in, kind of fix the machinery that needed fixed, be a body to represent the school. If somebody has a question, we now know who to go to. And then you were able to come in and start scheduling people that you wanted to hang out with specifically because you already have a contact with them and you want to see them. So why not come out, bring them out, make it easier.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I think I took the wind out of the sails on that with my 10-minute rant about how cool Robert Burns is and how I feel like an idiot for not keeping in contact with him. So what are some of the things that you've looked at when you are scheduling the classes and scheduling out the year besides that's a cool guy, I want to hang out with him? What have you looked at to try to diversify the education and hit more than one market? Because I do know that was something that was kind of mentioned where it's like, I don't want 30 weeks of classes that are all knives. How do we diversify this? How'd you find your route and your process within that?
Yeah, just trying to get a wide field of different classes and skill levels, get intro classes scheduled and advanced classes, and just trying to think of, what people would want, and also working through with instructors, getting the instructor and then figuring out what they want to teach, and just kind of nudging them and saying like, this 2 or 3 days, is like a sweet spot of class length, and maybe more err towards beginner, but whatever you want to teach, and seeing what their feedback is and what they're excited to come and teach.
Yeah, so I think we have an intruder. Sorry, I think that
it's Nathan White with the steel chair.
That's another office that he just walked into. Totally not a bathroom. It's another office. Yeah, I think one thing that we were doing was we were asking like, well, we had a knife class scheduled for July. So in August, we should probably do like a tool class. And then after that, we did a knife class. Could we do we could do something like maybe ornamental. And so we were trying to schedule out projects, varying projects, and then we would try to find the instructor. So I do like the fact that when you were sitting down and talking about your classes, it was like, yeah, I want a variety of things, so I'm going to reach out to a lot of different makers. But when I reach out to them, I'm going to ask them what they want to teach. Like, get them excited about it. That way they're posting about it. That way they're looking forward to it. And that way they're more involved in the planning. A lot of these guys are coming from like Texas and California and places where they're flying in the day before, and we need to know what kind of steel are you using? What kind of handles do you want to have? Are you wanting a certain kind of glue? Like a lot of these guys, when they're teaching, they want to use the products they use in their own shop so that they can stay true to their process, which is totally understandable. But if you're from 7 or 8 hours away, I need to know that 2 weeks before so I can get all that ordered and on hand.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we are necessarily terrible about that, but I think it's a lot easier when the instructor is excited and is making consistent communication with you to be able to have that ready to go. It's a lot easier when there's constant streams of communication going. And that's easier when you're excited about what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you're not looking forward to teaching a class, you're not going to want to call the school and talk to them,
Yeah.
So, cool. Well, we're doing a 3-part series for this first one. Nathan just walked in. We'll give him 10, 15 minutes to collect his thoughts and whatnot, and then we'll shoot his part of this. And he's just going to walk into frame. No worries. Doesn't care.
Walk into my own frame.
So, give us a looking forward section of what's going on in the school, who's coming out. We can pull it up. Producer Evan can pull up coleschool.com.
I'm still looking for that picture of
I think that's
Robert getting
trademarked.
nailed.
It has to be, right?
Yes, it is. I'm pretty sure it's his Instagram handle.
Yeah, it has to be. But give me a foreshadowing, and we'll find the picture of Robert at some point during this in the podcast.
Sure.
What's the next couple classes coming out, and what are you most excited about throughout the year?
There's Benton Frizzy's doing garden tools like in a couple weeks.
Next week.
Next week.
Hoary Hories.
Hoary Hories.
I just learned means dig.
Dig.
Yeah.
That's
It's like
cool.
an onomatopoeia in Japanese.
That's cool.
Which is fun.
And then I'm teaching an Intro to Damascus Steel class. And then Jason Knight's coming out for Brute to Forge Chef Knife. And then Ben Snurr is doing his Tong class.
And we're not doing an IBA meeting because of Ben's class. So plan around that, gentlemen.
Yeah. And then I have a Intro to Stock Removal Knives class. Emiliano's Sanmai Spear class, which I'm really excited for the spear class.
That's gonna be cool.
He's done a few spear classes, and each one he's done is like, man, I want to go make a spear. So cool. Emiliano's done really cool, like Viking style historical pieces and also Japanese.
I'm not as familiar with his work as I am a few other guys that are teaching, but from, like you said, he does more like recreationist, historical inspired blades.
Yeah, and he's made a lot of stuff using his own steel smelting.
Cool.
Bloom Steel, and Tamagotchi.
I forgot to feed mine.
It died long ago.
28 years.
And then Brett Onyx coming back for a intro to Forge Blade. Doing another Damascus class. Robert Burns is doing his Yakut knife, which I had never heard of a Yakut knife till he said that's what he wanted to do.
Robert does a lot of cool. I really like his Bowies, and he gets a lot of inspiration from like
Buoys.
Sorry. But he gets a lot of inspiration from kind of like revolutionary America, kind of up to Civil War area, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like what like I remember of his knives. Like I said, I haven't kept up with them because I'm an idiot, but that's a lot of his stuff is out there.
His style a lot. Which he was also, don't blame yourself too much. He was kind of out of it for a couple years. He had other life stuff going on.
Okay.
So he was
I'm
out of the shop for a little while. So
okay. So I still feel bad, but not like as bad, you know?
Yeah. Was there anything on the schedule left, Evan? Or was
Yep. Nope. Oh wait. Maybe a few.
Stock removal, which might turn into a friction folder class, maybe?
Oh.
That's still TBD.
Is the axe intensive Benton again?
Yes.
We do Benton's axe intensive every year. And I will say, I'm going to challenge you guys to top what happened last year at his class. Every single student bought at least an induction forge. And one student bought an induction forge, a double-sided 25, and literally every die we make for it. I think he had 5 people in his class. It might have been 4. But every single student came and used that discount that we offer when you take a class to purchase a lot.
Yeah.
That was sweet. Let's do it again. Woo! Run it back.
Is it a 10% discount when you take a class?
I believe it is 10% off an induction forge when you take a class.
No, it's 10% off an induction forge when you buy a machine.
10% off an induction forge when you buy a machine. That's standard.
10% off any purchase when you take a class.
10% off any purchase when you take a class. So if you're looking at a 25 ton,
We should talk about that more.
And you want to come out and try the 25 ton out, get one of our $500, $600 classes. The classes with Brett are actually really fun and informative. And then you get 10% off your press. So you actually end up saving money by buying a class. So keep that in mind. Back to you, Charlie.
Which we also have Josh Prince coming out. He's not on the schedule yet, but that's probably going to be in September.
Sweet.
Going to be doing a...
He's probably used to that chilly weather.
Yeah, he's from Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing a forge to finish knife, and we're also doing a creature.
Oh.
Angle iron creature to go along with it. I'm really...
Like a stand for the knife?
Mm-hmm.
That'll be sweet.
Yeah, I can make it out of it. Make it into a stand. So I made up a preform cut out of 3/16 by 1.5 angle iron, 2 foot long. I guess I could grab it. Do you want me to grab it?
I'm looking for the reference on his Instagram.
Okay.
You can go grab it if you want to.
Let's do this. Let's finish this out, Charlie. It's been a pleasure.
And then I can crash Nathan's
Grab
podcast.
exactly, and we can have it as a centerpiece on this desk instead of this.
Here we go.
Which,
Yeah, so there's Josh's piece he's done. Which he made that kind of inspired by what Leah Arapoch has done. She's a metal sculptor out in California that...
Yeah. Oh, he can't hear us, can he?
I can't hear him.
He asked if it was enamel. Yes.
Yeah, it's an ammo belly on it.
I thought he asked if it was an animal.
Also, yes.
It's a critter.
Just a critter.
Yeah, so a few years ago, 2000, 2002, 2001. I don't know.
That's 25 years ago, not a few.
2021, or 22. One of the two.
A couple years ago, 1997.
I don't know. It was like last decade, right? Anyways, me and Josh went out to California to do a show that Neil Kamamura put on in Sacramento. And then while we were out there, we spent a week with Nick Anderson making some tentacle pattern welded steel. And Leah Arapach, her shop was like right up the street from Nick's. So we spent a lot of time with her and Nick that week hanging out and making stuff. So
Cool.
that was a fun week. That that show, no one really sold anything at the show, but there was a lot of really good makers there, and it was a good time to hang out. And
Seems like that's common. Like some of the best shows we've ever gone to, we didn't sell a single machine, but like we made so many connections and got to hang out with really cool people. And so sometimes that's not always a bad thing. If you're not being distracted by customers, you can make really good friends.
yeah, I mean, so a lot. I only ever go to shows just to hang out with the people and make those connections and learn stuff from other people and share information. That's always the major draw to me.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that go to Blade Show that you would expect. You'd be like, hey, where's your booth? And I don't have one.
Yeah.
It's like, why not? I don't want to stand at my booth. I want to, there's 5,000 of the world's best knife makers in one room. I want to go talk to them.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty common at Blade Show.
Oh, yeah.
But
For sure.
cool.
Yeah.
I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to give you the opportunity to give you final thoughts. What are you excited about coming up? We just kind of talked about classes. Do you have any personal projects that are coming up that you wanna let people know about that are maybe just out of camera shot? Is that allowed to be shown? This is pretty sweet.
I don't know if you're gonna see it on the camera.
It's pretty deep.
Can you zoom in on it? Oh, yeah. So actually this pattern. Ooh. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh. This is the star mosaic pattern that I started when I came to visit that first time because you guys made those. You had those dies custom made that were
EDM cut. No big
EDM
deal.
cut.
EDM cut.
Yeah. No big deal.
It's like that.
Yeah. So yeah, I started that pattern then, and then did a little more welding to it, and then I laid it up. It's all little star points and all geometric craziness, but I ended up stacking it up to like a circle like that big and welding it on one of our 60 tons.
Yeah, that's an understatement. It was huge.
It was chunky.
Yeah. Lots of triangles.
Squares. Yeah. Rhombus or diamonds. And
Hey, diamonds are just two
squares.
triangles.
Yeah.
So are squares. Squares are just two triangles. You of all people should know this.
Yeah. So yeah, I've got one more weld to do on that, and then it's gonna get forged out into a knife. So I'm really excited to see that pattern forged out into a blade.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to the classes coming up. And
Not only is Charlie our instructor, and not only does he teach classes here, but he also teaches other places sometimes. So also keep an eye out on his Instagram to see if you can take classes at areas that are potentially closer to you than we are. So do you have any of those that are set in stone that you can share?
yeah, I'm gonna be demonstrating at the New England School of Metalwork at their bladesmithing symposium. I think that's what they call it. They do it every July. So they invited me just last week. So
Cool.
I'm going to be doing that and probably teaching a class after the hammer-in or the symposium.
Cool.
So I'm excited to make it back there. So when I first started getting into blacksmithing, I actually took a course up there when I was 15 back in 2006, which was
actually
2006.
2006. Yeah.
So part of me was like, I kind of wish it was next year that I was going up there. Like 20 years later.
20 years back in the biscuit.
19 is good too. Not an even number. But yeah.
How important are anniversaries anyway?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm really excited to get back there and be the teacher now. So
cool. Well, anything else coming up? Is that wrapping it up?
Yeah, gonna be making pans.
Oh yeah, the minis.
What? Oh yeah. We didn't talk about the mini classes. So we've got. Since I'm here as a full-time instructor now, it's like, well, we need to do something to help supplement the school, and
Charlie's bored, guys. Get Charlie unboard.
So yeah, I've spent quite a bit of time developing quick little like hour or 2 hour long projects that you can come in during the week and make a pan or forge a knife or forge a bracelet, make a cutlery set or skull keychain and all that.
Look at that value.
And that's just going to grow and grow and have different options and different little projects you can come in and do. So we've got the pans, the steel pan, but I've got some copper that I've cut out into pan blanks that I'm going to form those and then tin them. And I've got some grade 5 titanium that I'm going to forge into the handles. So that's going to be really cool. Lightweight, low thermal conductivity, high thermal conductivity of the copper, the non-stickiness of the tin.
Yeah, the non-stickiness.
That's the technical term.
Yeah. It's like when I tell people that they need to use a high tackifier, every time they're like, yeah, you just made that word up. That's not real.
Yeah,
it really is, guys.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to messing with that and experimenting with that. And we got spin lathes too that we picked up from a spinning factory that closed down. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, the factory itself was stationary, but they did spinning.
Technically, we're all spinning.
All right, that's enough.
Relativity. So yeah, those are getting set up, and hopefully we'll be able to offer classes on those. So we'll see what happens. I'm kind of terrified. I've never spun anything, so I'm kind of terrified of them. But we'll learn how to use them, and then.
Scary lathe operation ever.
Yeah.
It's not scary. No. There's no cutting.
I'd rather do spinning than actual like cutting or drilling.
I guess so. But you're like, at least with a metal lathe, you're not like directly holding onto the blade. It's all
wait, you're not
turning wheels.
Have I been doing it wrong this whole time? Cool. So we've got lots of stuff coming up. The school is still under construction. Charlie is figuring out what he can do to make the school better. Charlie having such a brilliant mind on the construction of the school, both physical construction and kind of setting out maybe a year, 2-3 year plan and understanding what we want to achieve has been huge. Come take classes, come hang out with Charlie. Let us know your feedback, how we can make it better. What instructors do you want to see? What projects do you want to come take classes covering? All of that can be shared at Coal Iron School.
Coal School.
Coal School.
Yeah, I want to hear what you guys want to come teach, what you guys want to come learn. Yeah. And if you want to come teach too.
And at the end of this podcast, I will cover what we're doing as far as getting the people involved, and maybe some content can win you some free stuff. Maybe
free stuff.
Tagging us in videos of what you're making. Maybe you commenting on one of our videos could get you tagged. So at the end of this video, we will be sharing ways that you can get involved with what we're doing and potentially be rewarded for it. So Charlie, thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate you both coming out to Indiana and also out of your hole and into this office. I appreciate you. I appreciate time with you. So
yeah, I'm glad I got to finally be on a podcast with you.
Yeah.
Been looking forward to it for 7 months.
7 months, guys. And we finally
8,
granted
whatever it's been.
Joke's on
July.
you. This was a make-a-wish. All right, guys, follow Charlie at Charles Lionheart, right? Or is it just Lionheart?
Charles Lionheart.
Charles Lionheart on Instagram. Follow Cole School at Cole_school on Instagram. Send us emails, get involved. We now have somebody monitoring school at coleiron.com. So let us know what you think. Moving on. All right, guys, we are back. We planned on this episode being about an hour to an hour and a half. But
like
turns out
didn't work.
When you get to know Charlie, he's very, very easy to talk to.
Voracious stalker.
Which we talked about it in his interview, so I don't feel bad for sharing this, but we were all like worried that he was not going to fit in because he's not loud enough like the rest of us. Like we're all really loud. But when you get Charlie talking, he's very, very interesting, and this is a positive point for him. I'm not saying like he talks too much, but I didn't expect to sit down with Charlie and spend an hour going over very specific topics about the school. Like I could chat with him for an hour and it can kind of float around, but that was a wonderful time. So this podcast will probably end up being 2 hours because I also have to fit Logan in after you. So
I hope you have another hour.
Historically, Logan has been very on topic when we do podcasts. He stays very on topic. Now, not ever again, but on podcasts. All right, so welcome back, guys, to the middle of the podcast. You didn't go anywhere. We left for 10 minutes and rearranged. Nathan is here. Nathan started the company with Andy Davis, and he is our remaining founder. We lost Andy 2.5 years ago, which I'm only filling people in who are new to the podcast. And if you want to know the full story of Cole Iron Works, how we started, where we are about a year ago, we did do a history of Cole Iron Works podcast when we first launched this up. Nathan was able to very articulately walk us through some of the things that got us started, some of the challenges that we faced. He did that with David and I, who, while we were not full-time employees, when it started, some days it felt like we were full-time employees. And David was able to come and be one of the first full-time employees, and he recently left us to go full-time with blade making and some other adventures. And I was able to join us 3 years ago as a full-time floor manager, and that's now evolved into general manager. So we are going to talk with Charlie's back. Come on, Charlie. They know you're here. They know you're here. This is the creature that you guys will be making in the class.
Yep.
We're going to put it dead center.
Oh, yeah. That looks great, actually.
Yeah, that's super sick. That's super cool. So it's cut out of angle iron on a tube laser that our sister company, MoFab, has recently purchased. And then Charlie took it through the induction, right? A couple pieces, and then mostly in the bigger forge, obviously, because this doesn't fit into induction. But oh, sure. So mostly in the big forge, but he was able to out of the cutout, you're going to shape and form this to either be a stand for your knife or just a fun little creature that you can have on display. So this will sit here. And if you guys have any questions about it, email us at school@coleiron.com. And Charlie will answer questions about what this is and its function and how beautiful it is. We could Cerakote it. We could do a lot of cool stuff. We could paint it. You look miserable. All right. So what we're going to do with Nathan is we are going to walk through where we've gotten in the past maybe year and a half since we gave our last update.
Out of the frying pan and into the fire.
Out of the frying pan and into the fire.
Yeah.
That's a decision. That's a weird name for a memoir. Unless you're a chef, I guess. But so we're going to go over kind of what's been going on the past year and a half, and then some big projects that we've been working on. And then we will jump into the trajectory of where we see ourselves going and kind of some of the big vision stuff that you have for us. So where we left off last year is we were making C-frame presses, and we were really excited to announce the H-frame presses. And so in the
Has
past,
it really been that long?
since we've given the actual update of the company, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We've had a couple interviews and stuff like that, but I don't think we've really covered the feedback we've gotten from the H-frames. We really haven't covered induction forges. And we also haven't talked about expanding our lineup to be a full shop offering, which was toyed around with the idea. And then we kind of were like, no, we make presses and we're really good at that. So we'll stay in that lane. And then we decided we're doing a disservice to ourselves, our company, and also to our customers. When our customers don't have an option and we shut that lane down, it's a bad look. And one thing that I figured out, so I guess just jumping right into it, one thing that I figured out when we kind of made that decision where it's like, okay, the next thing out, instead of a power hammer, is going to be another press or another lineup of presses. A lot of the feedback that we got was like, hey guys, this is super cool. We're really excited for you. What about that power hammer? Where's these other things that we've been begging for? As current customers that want to give you more money, we want these things. We were like, hey guys, we're just going to make a different lineup of presses, which was 100% a necessity. And we can maybe go into that a little bit, but so that's kind of where we ended off at, was like, hey guys, we're still going to build the power hammer. We're just going to slow it down. And I think the market's more ready for an H-frame modular setup.
Well, I think what I was looking at was, the C-frames are an incredibly inefficient method of manufacturing a press because you have so much material tied up into the frame and the slide assembly, and it's astronomically expensive compared to, a tubular structure as far as the rigidity. So I just wanted to expound upon the success we had with the 12 tons, and I felt like we had a really good path forward. Logan had come up with a really cool, we had been trying to come up with a way to introduce T-slots because we got an Anyang in to play with and try out. That's now in my home shop, and it's something that, the T-slots are more flexible, but they're more like there is no die change. Like when I set up my Anyang, I don't take it down for 3 months.
Right.
And it's got to be a reason to take it apart. And so, the flexibility of our quick attach dies with the capacity for a T-slot, when I saw that, I was just like, yeah, that's the answer. And we've got some ideas in the realm of like, we can make that work on the C-frame side too. But as of right now, the quick attach on the C-frames is so functional. And once we got to the conical, the work holding's there, the rigidity's there. I'm just, enamored with it. So that allowed us to get into, opening up the area around the dies, and it was more economical. And it kind of accidentally coincided with a material increase across the board that hit our C-frames hard.
Yeah.
And so right around that launch time, which was not on purpose, but we were able to get the C-frames updated to proper pricing and give people an option at a lower dollar amount. And, Evan went through the process of designing that whole press configurator. I mean, the press builder tool in and of itself was a product launch.
Every time Evan would have an idea in a meeting, we would be like, no, do it our way.
Well, I think,
and then he ended up doing his way, and it was so much better.
Well, he was just able to bring all of the pieces we were hoping to hit. You've got to have really slick navigation. You got to see what your options are. And, for Andy and I, when we were getting started in developing presses, we were using Baum Hydraulics, hydraulic calculators for everything. It's just an online resource. And I felt like it was so helpful to get my brain to quickly understand what I was looking at for hydraulic systems. Because it's a 4-inch cylinder, you get this tonnage, you get this speed at this flow rate, et cetera. And so I wanted to have an option where people could go in and like, what's my dream press? Put it together. Well, if I strip a couple items back, I could have the framework of my dream press at my budget today, and then later on upgrade the power pack and upgrade whatever accessory package. Yeah, absolutely. So it's like you can get the foundation there, and it just felt like it was time to roll out a complete offering for the presses. And so, we launched the H-frames. We launched the power hammer. We launched the H-frames. We purchased the rights to the KA, and we're still working through that process a bit, just because we want the launch to be really solid. We've sold lots of KAs. We're going to sell more. We've had to build out work cells and processes for all that stuff. That's been a blast. And the KAs, I have one in my shop. We have one in the school. They are just the perfect helping hand for when I need a big hit. One of the downsides of a press is the squish and all the heat dissipation. But a hammer like that, I can fine tune a stamp. I can kick a drift out that's stuck. I just have it sitting there. Mm-hmm. I have mine literally right behind my anvil. I have a tiny home shop, but I've got, 2 very large presses, a KA, a 600-pound anvil, a giant gas forge, 4 of the largest grinders I've ever seen in my life, all 132, and then I've got a 30-inch, 15 horsepower. I mean, just the biggest stuff you can imagine in the smallest space. So it's just
one
like
and a half car garage.
Yeah, if that. And so anyway, it's all tight, but that way I can really move between the machines. So the KA has been a really cool tool. I'm super excited to get that spooled up. And along the way, we're like, okay, we launched the power hammer, and everyone knows that this is what we want to pursue. And now we have to, rubber meets the road this project. Gotcha. And it's taken us almost 2 years to get the design updated. We went through 15 revisions on the original hammer before we said, we really can't revise this anymore. I need a new framework based on what we've learned.
Right.
So, we've got a time counter on the first hammer. We've been running it. We've got 100 hours of full runtime. And now we know what we're going to be doing. And so we've got all the parts in. We're finalizing some of the machining processes for getting the new hammer out. And it's a totally different monster. Mm-hmm. And, we've got it up to like 70-pound ram weight. We've rigidized the crank system. I mean, everything that we wanted to fix, we were able to go in and redesign. And Logan designed this hammer, and it has been an absolute passion and a quagmire of just, problems and challenges to overcome. And so, everybody the response to the initial hammer was, that's super cool. We got a lot of feedback. People wanted to see what we could do. And, on the other side of that, we had a couple guys from around the world say, that's awesome. I could never figure out how to build a hammer in the United States. It's just too expensive.
Yeah.
And so, our capabilities, the plate frame design, fabrication, all the machining work in-house, we've got a couple local vendors that we're able to outsource our big, that we're doing 10-inch solid for the anvil on the power hammer all the way down. Yep. And it, I can't machine that in-house. We've got some of the biggest machines I've ever seen, milling machines just right up the road.
Yeah.
And so, we've got everything that we need. Yeah. And now it's just a design framework combination and putting the pieces together. So we've got 2 hammers sitting out in the R&D bay being assembled as we speak. And we're down to, we initially were using off-the-shelf components for a lot of it. And through designing and building the KAs, we've realized we can build these. Yeah. So we're building the cylinders in-house. We're going way further than we did on the initial design, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about. I think the one thing that we've kind of mentioned briefly, but maybe people don't know, is we intentionally took the hammer to like Makers Camp to Quad State.
Yeah, I wanted feedback. I wanted to get that.
We knew that it wasn't 100% there. And when we took it out, it'd be like, hey guys, this is our dream. Please be nice. But also,
let's run it till it breaks.
Let's run it till it breaks.
Let's work on this. Right.
I got an email from a customer earlier today that said, hey, I want to buy a hammer. I love that this is American made.
Yeah.
Why should I buy it over something else?
Yeah.
And the answer is the community built it.
Sure.
We didn't have 2 guys and build a hammer that 2 guys needed. Mm-hmm. We took it to Maker Camp. We took it to Quad State. We took it to IBA events. We had it in our school. Mm-hmm. We had a Kurt Fehrenbach come out and teach a class with the hammer.
Yeah.
And then say, what would you change? So this is a hammer that has Logan has designed it. Logan has built it. I don't want to take any credit away from him. He deserves so much credit, but it's built by the community, and every bit of feedback that we've gotten, Logan has taken the time to digest and really understand how to achieve those goals.
Right.
And there's obviously going to be a couple that, some guys wanted it to run faster and some guys wanted to run slower.
Right.
You can't do both, right? But Logan has really taken the time to say, okay, instead of building a hammer that I want, let me build the hammer that people are asking for. Right. And so that's really the difference when you look at us compared to other hammers that are on the market right now, is it's exactly what you're asking for.
Right.
And I'm not saying that because we're super smart. I'm saying that because we did that intentionally. Right. So as these start to roll out, I'm really excited to see the difference that, the people that have run the hammer that we have currently, when people get those hands on theirs, the new hammers, I'm really excited to see the differences that they see and to see their input in action.
Yeah, sure. I think every one of our successes as a company has been from feedback. I mean, that's been how we have grown our company over the years, and that's how we'll continue to do it. And one of the other things that I think is a really big deal that we're working on right now is an American-made induction forge. Like, we've got a wonderful company that we've partnered with in China, but once Donald Trump came into office and the tariffs are on the horizon, it was obvious to me, at least, that we need to figure this out. And I went out to every big industrial induction manufacturer I could find, and we found a partner. And so, it's not going to be a machine that we can build in-house. It's just, that's not our skill set. And I don't think it's right for us to do that. But what is our skill set is finding good partners. And so, this machine is built with the end user in mind. It's not an off-the-shelf offering that people, that's been around for 30 years. Like, this is a purpose-built machine.
And that's what our induction forge is now. And we've been transparent about that. Like, this is the same thing as other offerings. The difference is the chiller.
Right. And the support.
I joked earlier, like, you're buying my phone number.
Absolutely.
And that means a lot to a lot of people.
Right.
The difference between what we're doing currently and what we're fixing to do is this is 100% built for blacksmiths.
Yes.
This isn't something that was, we can kind of convert this.
Right.
Right. It's like we started back at ground zero and said, we know we want these features.
Right.
And then as we're working with this company, they're like, well, can we do these other features? And it's like, that would be super cool.
Well, and the basic machine isn't necessarily that different. The real value here is when I'm buying a piece of Chinese equipment, it's generally because I'm buying on price. Now, we've designed two machines, the 15 and the 25, with our manufacturer to offer the most versatile machines that we can devise, but it's still within the constraints of that system. And so now that we're working with this new company, we're able to say what we want, where the price needs to be, because that is a contributing factor. These can't be $50,000 units.
Right.
But on top of that, they already have a built-in infrastructure for service and support. They've got nationwide coverage for service. And so a customer that buys this is looking for a plug-and-play solution that it's not the cheapest, but it is the best. And when they have a problem, if they need a wear component, if they have a question about can it do this, we have now an entire staff of people within this partner organization that can answer those questions, that can get you the correct parts and the processes for, getting your unit back up and running when there is an issue. Every machine breaks. Having that service and support is what creates reliability. And, I've been thrilled with the upfront tests that I've seen. And I think this is going to be a really, really good product to get to the market. But I'm curious, at some point, our community gets to decide, is this a good fit for what we're trying to do? And I think it is, but we'll see. Proof's in the pudding. So we will be driving out at some point to their New York facility to do a run through. We're going to drive out because I want to pick up a bunch of Facebook Marketplace stuff on the way there.
I'll meet you there. Pick me up from the airport. I will be flying.
And go get trained, because the inductions have been a black box for us. We knew that it was the right call to offer them. we had a really cool solution for our market.
We got bullied into selling them.
But I think our best asset is that you answer the phone, and if we have to swap a component, we just ship a new unit.
Yeah.
And that gives people the reliability they're hoping for, but it is a Chinese system, and the architecture, it's not to the same standard that you would expect from a U.S. manufacturer.
Right.
So I see these tariffs as an opportunity for us to offer something on a competitive price point that is not like anything that's on the market right now. Yep. And I think that's going to be a big deal. So, we've got to build out our systems and processes for getting those into people's hands. But that, having a good partner like we do, I think that's going to be a no-brainer for us to see a successful product.
We've always excelled in and how we got started was we find gaps in the marketplace.
Right.
So there's no 110 C-frame press on the market. And there might not have been any H's at the time either.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well now there's not something that somebody can just save up a couple months. Like this is an investment. So let's make a 12 ton. That's something you can save up a couple months and get.
Yeah.
And then the power hammer, obviously there's not an American made power hammer and
self-contained.
Yes. As of the past 6 months to a year, there's no real offerings for a self-contained from even an American seller. So the market's right for that. The everything that we've done, it's like the H-frames is a modular system. Nobody's ever done that with the press. With the induction forges, the way that we broke into it was, guys, you don't have to worry about your water management system. You don't have to send emails and pictures and translate things.
Right.
It's the service. And with this, the missing gap in the market is really an induction forge designed for blacksmiths.
Yeah.
Because like you said, you're just taking up like a generic induction heater and calling it an induction forge and marketing it towards blacksmiths. And we've done our best at making a turnkey solution and offering great service. And I think we've hit on that very well.
Absolutely.
But having a product that is specifically made with the blacksmith in mind takes it back to that power hammer point where it's like, as we work through this process, this isn't something we're going to launch next month. So we're fishing for engagement. Email us. What does your induction forge not do that you want it to do? One of the biggest pieces of feedback that I get is I want to be able to set it via temperature. Right. And we've kind of talked to them about it, and we don't have to go into depth about that. But like, what does your induction forge not do that you want it to do? Because we are building this for blacksmiths. We're not just taking a generic piece and calling it a forge.
Absolutely. And, I think one of the things that I want to explore with this partner is, whoa.
Sidewalk's going crazy. He needs to explore a better partnership, it sounds like.
So they are able to do custom solutions. And so I think, once we get through the door with this initial product launch, something that we can begin to kind of amass is how can we better serve the growing maker community that's scaling beyond just that backyard blacksmith. Guys and gals that are taking their business or their hobby into a business and, talking to ornamental workers and people that are doing large projects, they can bid a system in, they can place the bid with this system being wrapped into that.
Yeah, we have people do that with our presses all the time.
Absolutely.
They call and get a quote and they say, hey, I have to loop this into this bid. It's going to pay for the job.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the accessibility at a project scale where you can pay for your equipment to accomplish the jobs as you go along is how you end up with a full suite of capability in your shop.
Right.
And I think that's going to be a great option. But then when someone has a custom need, we now have a partner that can satisfy, 1,000 kilowatt level systems. We just have never had that before.
Yeah.
So, we played with the larger kilowatt units on the Chinese side, but the offerings got pretty sketchy at best. We had some big failures that we bought them, brought them in, and used them ourselves. But and we'll continue to use them. They're capable machines. There's no doubt about that. But I think this is the solution we were hoping for.
Well, and I think this goes even more in hand with our ethos, which is we want to offer you the best option.
Yeah.
Period. And we tend to we're trying to wrangle the dog out. She's so sad she wanted to be on camera. But we want to offer you the best option. And we are aware of price point. It's not something that we completely ignore, but it's also, we're not going to sacrifice functionality and quality to make a cheaper machine. If we can't do it for a reasonable price, then obviously it's a non-starter. We can't sell induction forges for $60,000.
Right. That's why the first DPCs that we went out and tried to get, we were getting quotes back $40,000 a piece.
Yeah.
Right. And they were going to build and service them. It's still a non-starter for our market. And I knew that then. And when Logan came to me and said, "Hey, I think I can build a system that can do this control. Like, I'm in automation, and I'm looking for work." It's like, okay.
Yeah.
So I think there's a portion of this where the opportunities have presented themselves. This one kind of lined up nicely. And, I'm thankful. I'm very grateful to get to be a part of it. So here we are.
Yeah. So, obviously that was like the big chunk I wanted at the end of the induction forges. So I mentioned at the beginning of the video that we released the 25 kilowatts. Sales were okay. They were kind of stagnant. And then we put that video out with Brett.
Yeah.
And they just blew up. Okay. So yeah, they started selling.
Well, yeah.
Couldn't keep them in stock.
People were seeing that. Yeah, Brett has been just such a sweet soul to be a part of. Like, I'm glad to have him in my network of humans.
He's cost me a lot of money recently.
And when he came and was doing the smelts, and we came and played, and I was scooping chips out of the Haas and throwing them, and it was just a nice reminder.
It literally was a schoolyard that day. Like, we were just like, what else can we mill?
Right. and it helped me understand. And then of course, we videoed it and demonstrated some of the capability growth throughout. And I think that's just, there's not been as capable of a machine available on single phase ever. Mm-hmm. And so, even our manufacturers like, "Oh, we can't do that." I was like, "Are you sure?" Well, maybe we can. And so they did.
Yeah.
And so here we are. And so we're looking for that same level again. But I think people, it's been the same thing for the presses, the inductions, the hammers. It's going to be for the power hammer. People want to see it put to work. Then they want to see the true potential of what capability they're buying. That's what they're buying. They're buying a bigger arm and a bigger hammer, and they can do the work that needs to be done, and it allows them to design. I couldn't be doing all the best made work without all the presses and equipment and grinders. It's like, there's no way I could.
That's foreshadowing of the next thing we're going to bring.
So, what you're buying. Corbin was out there the other day, and he was looking at my pile of old crappy tools, and he's like, "Why do you do this?" And it's like, hey man, like, I've been in love with tools since I was 8. Mm-hmm. Like, tools are capability. And that capability, I heard it put really well in a YouTube video a couple years back. This guy bought all this acreage in like California, and he went and bought a very large bulldozer, and he built a dam and a freaking subdivision around the lake. And he's just a guy in a bulldozer. And he said, all I did was buy capability.
Yeah.
And that is what gave me opportunity. You have to have the capability to take grasp of the opportunities as they present themselves. Unfortunately, that's why the rich tend to get richer. Right. But in this realm where we're working with our hands, it's our opportunity buyer. It's our ability to make good on our dream and vision of what we want to see come forth, and the axes, the hammers, those bigger parts that you've got to have capability in hand. Right.
And I think, I just kind of got a weird epiphany there. We always try to talk about like, it's all about customer first, and it is. And our dreams truly are, I want to make my customer's home shop. That's what we specialize in, is single phase residential power. I want to make my customer's home shop their dream shop. Mm-hmm. And it's always felt really good to work and be able to do that. And when you talk to people that are like, "Hey, I was able to go full time last year. Yeah. I couldn't do that if I didn't have your press," or they tell me like, "Hey, me and my son go out and forge every night." And you hear really cool stories. But I think we have this really weird, unique collective of people who are really selfish, but it just so happens that what our goal is that customer experience. So like the customer is getting a great end product and the customer is getting great service, but it's also a little bit selfish because like that's what we want. And like we're serving ourselves and we're getting
create the business we want to deal with, right?
Exactly.
Like, of course.
It's a way better way to put it.
Well,
yeah. So I came from a background of retail where anybody could walk in the store. Before that I was in food. You don't get to pick your customer, and everybody likes t-shirts and sandwiches, and that's what I sold. With this product that we're putting out and the product lineup that we're putting out, we get to work with like-minded people. And, I get customer calls that are like, hey, can your press do this? And can it do that? And some of the most fun that I have is I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me order that.
Yeah.
And I can spend 2 hours in the shop.
Right.
And, a lot of the R&D to build the machine, I have no part of. And I shouldn't. I'm an idiot. But I'm kind of a good middle track of like, can your press do it? If I can do it, pretty much anybody in their home shop can do it safely. I don't have no experience, but I'm also not a master maker by any means.
Sure.
So if I can go into the shop,
but you're willing to try.
I'm willing to try. And that's what a lot of these guys are is like, oh, well, I kind of want to start stamping but I want to do it cold. Is that safe? I almost killed myself. Don't do that. Like, don't. It shot out of the press and it was terrifying. Don't do that. But
really short tools. That's how you do that.
But we get to live out this our dream with other people, and I just think that's really cool. So
I was thinking about that the other day. I was sitting in my shop at home working, and I looked around and I thought, man, if like 10-year-old me could just like see this, dude, I almost started crying. I'm almost crying now. It's just like, it has been such an honor and a gift to be a part of this community and to be able to build effective machines and, give people an opportunity to do this. I hated my 9-to-5 job. And when I was able to start Cole and we started getting momentum, it was the most fun and the hardest work I've ever had. I mean, you're talking about 130-hour weeks, but it was fruition, and it's just been such a journey to go down and such an incredible blessing and honor to be a part of it. I often tell people I feel like I'm just a guy on a snowball going down a hill. Like it's growing and I have, I can make it go 1 inch that way or 1 inch that way, but like the momentum is the community. And as long as we don't stop listening, we're in good, in a good spot. And so, anyway, if I was 10 and I walked into my own shop, I'd be like,
I think 22, 23, 24-year-old Nathan
friggin' 30-year-old Nathan
would stop and look around. And it's like,
dude,
if you would have told me, you came to me, or I was actually at your house and you were like, I'm starting this business with Andy, whatever. And then a few months later, it's like, hey, we finally picked a name,
Yeah, right.
If you would have told me during that era, like, hey, you're going to quit like a pretty good career and you're going to move back to your hometown.
You talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
What you gave up for us.
I just need you to know. But you're going to give this up and you are going to move back to your hometown that you have sworn since you were 18 years old you would never return to. And you would be happier than you ever have been. Like, that's nice. and you show what's going on around in the shop.
Yeah.
If you would have showed me that a month after you started Cole, I would have been like, no way, that's not.
Oh yeah. I mean, when we were working out of a 600 square foot barn that was literally collapsing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Actively trying to kill us.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I think I said earlier, you have a willingness to try. And I think that's the missing key for a lot of things. Like people are going to be successful if they try.
Right.
Like you're going to fail. I mean, we thought we were starting an ornamental iron company. Like that didn't pan.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what product we should be making until I started making a product I shouldn't be making.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think we have a staff now too of people with a similar mindset where I don't think either of us have to hold people's hands. They're problem solving. They're overcoming. We don't want them to have to design their own processes and systems, but we do want them to be competent builders. I mean, Greg is a great example.
Right.
Dude's a freaking genius.
Well, and I can trust them when they come to problems. Come to me with problems that they're actual issues, and it's not just like, I didn't want to work today.
Sure.
Heck
yeah. No, we don't have any of that. This is a hardworking group of people.
I get people that get really anxious when things slow down. Like they don't. It's hey, I don't have anything to do for the next 12 minutes. Please tell me something.
Right.
Like
right.
It's a very weird feeling to have somebody come up and say like, I'm not busy. What do you need?
But when you're in a small team, we got 10 guys here. When you're in a small team, everybody pulls their weight. You've got nobody.
They have to.
You have to because it's immediately obvious.
Right.
And there's just no room for it. There's just no room. And man, I am so impressed by the team that we've assembled now, consistently. And there's problems because there's people, but everybody is on board and we are rowing the ship together. So,
well, anyway. And I'm learning very quickly that, I can be more directive because people care.
No,
I don't have to like.
Yeah, you're not offending anyone.
I'm not playing politics.
They're here to work, right?
Right. So issues that I've walked into where I'm like, oh, I'm going to deal with this. I'm like, okay, so this is a problem, and they're like, oh, I'll fix it. That's fine. What's going on? And it's like,
that was my whole thing. All right, thanks.
Yeah, okay. So there's been a couple instances in the past, I don't know, probably 6 months that I've had to kind of dad voice a little bit, like, hey, not okay. And every single time the response has been like, totally get it. That's my bad.
Yeah.
Let's walk through a solution.
Right.
Right. The moment that it's like made apparent, it's like, and people don't take for granted what they have here.
Right.
And that's, I can treat them well because I'm treated well. Because I'm treated well, it tells me that the employees that are treating me well, it's like, it's a trickle down effect. And it's just a really weird feeling to have. Like, usually you have a trade-off of like, oh, I have this really cool job, but the customers suck. Right. Or like, oh, my customers are the best, but I don't really like what I do. Yeah. There's always things to pick and choose. And I genuinely, like, when I stop and look back, it's like, what would I change about Cole Ironworks? I would have a quiet office once a week. That's it. And we're getting down to, and we talked about this morning, we're getting down to such minute quality of life things that it's like, yeah, dude.
Is that even worth doing?
It's a quality of life improvement, right. But also it's going to take us 10 hours to do or, whatever. Yeah. And those things are totally worth doing.
And worth exploring.
But when we're getting down to the nuances that are like, I would like to have a place to send emails once a week so that I can think about that email. It's like, that's a pretty cool job. That's my biggest complaint. Like that's a pretty cool setting.
We're working on it.
So, all right, well, let's pivot very quickly. This is also turning into kind of a long form, which is fine.
You just played at 250 speed.
Yeah. David's a big fan of that.
Yep.
So we're building presses. We have historically built presses. We've released the Power Hammer, or the Power Hammer will be fully released here in the coming months. The K75 we're probably about a month or two away full production on. We are making full steam ahead progress. It's been absolutely insanity. And on top of that, we have taken on this idea of OEM forging. Mm-hmm. And with a pretty big name client, experimented at a large scale. We didn't go to Ace Hardware and say, can I put 5 axes on your shelf? Mm-hmm. We jumped into maybe one of the most recognizable brand names that had a lot of things going on at the time and was kind of in the news. And maybe not in the news, but
that's a level of dramatic.
Yeah, it wasn't dramatic, but like they were being pushed more to the forefront because Peter had just bought his company back, and there was kind of a little bit of drama of like, well, they ran it into the ground, and then Peter was like, hey, I want that back because I still believe in it. So people were talking about it in the community, and all we did was send a message. Mm-hmm. And now you're producing.
Yeah,
like I said, one of the most recognizable brand names.
When I Logan and I were on a trip when we were buying the KA line. We were going up to get trained at Postville, and I think that was when it happened. And Logan was like, "Hey, did you see like Peter bought the company back? Like we should reach out to him." And I thought, man, we've got so much going on. I just don't know. I don't know. And so I let that kind of tool and I had personally tried several times to reach out to Buck and Billy Ray. There were a couple other makers, like names. I had looked into buying the Kelly Axe line, and then we walked into Warwood literally the week after. I had approached an attorney to find out who was like owning this patent, right? And we walked in, and they had the the Black Raven poster in their front office, and I looked at Chris, the owner. I was like, "Tell me you don't why what is this?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, we bought the rights. We're going to start. We've got all the equipment in the shop. We're setting the big upsetter up right now. Like we're going to start this up." And I thought,
Yeah.
like,
Did you tell him like it would have been way cooler for us to own it because it started here?
No, I told him I was really happy that it was going to keep going.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing was the last purchased, company, the company that had purchased the line they were making half axes, right? And so, that heritage deserves to be
and they're the right
continued.
guys to do it.
And they are doing a great job.
Yeah.
I think when I had already been through all that, and I was like, okay, like, we had just gotten off of a contract where we were working with Brant Cochran up in Maine to help set up a new kind of a bigger industrialized process for them. And so they, using our biggest equipment. And I thought, man, excuse me, you should burp. Oh, it's like a lot of burps. Hold on.
Isolate that. I need that as my ringtone.
I thought, I think we can do this. And I told Peter, I've wanted to do this for years.
Yeah.
And I sent him a video. Our friend Adam Bender shot of me in like 2011.
Indianapolis Tool Company.
I wanted to start Indianapolis Tool Company and make axes and hammers. And I needed $7,000 to buy a press to do it. So I really went the long way around. And
we built a press.
I got one. Yep. But I was like, Peter, I would love the opportunity. And he came, him and his partner came and visited, and we just had a really wonderful time. And I was, Peter's at a really critical point with Best Made where he gets to set the tone for the next 10 years.
Right.
And so it's important that he does it right. And he's really putting the time and effort into making sure that that's the case. And so going with small batch heritage manufacturing styles, like let's use a lot of US makers. Let's source this locally. I mean, the guy is really going double barrel on doing this right. And so I was honored when he said yes. And so, we tooled up. I did hundreds of experimental axes, and, Logan helped me refine the tooling. And then my wife was about to have a baby. And so I thought, well, I'm going to be on paternity leave. So I took that tooling to my home shop and started producing them there. And that has kind of developed into, devising new tooling and equipment and processes and stress testing the Cole Ironworks lineup, because we're putting hundreds of axes through these machines and figuring out what wears out fast, and that just gives us fodder to make our process and our products better. So it's been a very challenging learning experience going from, I at that point had been sitting in my office and answering phones and questions, and I wasn't forging. I mean, I hadn't forged in like a year. Yeah, there's Isla. Look at that little thing. So also, after she was born, I got to work zero amount. I forgot, fifth kid. I have 4 other kids to take care of while my wife's recovering. So, but that's been awesome. And, I think it gives everyone here an opportunity to step up, because I'm not here as often working through that. But I think long-term, what we may see is as that grows and scales, that becomes a full production line here on site. And I'm hungry and looking for other opportunities to expand that.
Yeah.
And so, I've got some real masterclass blacksmiths that work for us. And I think it is just a golden era of opportunity where we can be a U.S. manufacturer in a way that when we're doing small batch for Best Made, he can call me and say, hey, I need 10 of something special.
Yeah.
It's like, I can do that. Yeah. Where when you're functioning with industry titans, you pay $200,000 and you get
what you
10,000 axes and you're done. And so we can be super responsive to feedback. We sent out a survey for the first axe launch, the Old Gold, and we got some really good feedback. And that was really insightful for me because there was a lot of positivity. And then there were people like, hey, I wish this was better. And I told Peter, like, that's amazing because it takes a special customer to be willing to tell you.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not good at that.
Yeah.
I go to a restaurant and they hand me a well-done steak. It's like, well, I guess I'm not going to enjoy this $50, right? I'm not a good customer.
No, I laugh because we have we have a lineup of customers that there's one in particular, and it was with the Power Hammer. We took it to Quad State. Him and his friend were running the Power Hammer, and they ran it for quite a while. And everybody that came up, they were like, isn't this sweet? This is super awesome. Like, we're very involved with other people. We're walking through. They're very experienced with power hammers. The entire time I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I can't believe we fooled them. like I know that this isn't 100% of a machine. And that's exactly what they said. As soon as nobody else was around, they were like, guys, this is so cool. You're 90% there.
Right.
And I'm so excited to see where it goes. I'm so excited to see what happens from it. But they gave us the valuable one of the big the big feedback is they were like, why is your throat so big?
I know.
And it was like
funny.
We were like top tooling. That was like we specifically did that. We want huge.
Yeah.
They were like, that is dumb.
And dangerous.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
And then we had Kurt come out and run it. And Kurt made an anvil and was like throwing beers to people and like he was just having a party. And then as soon as he got back, he goes, boys, you got to get to work on that hammer.
Yeah.
You got to get it working.
Right.
And it's like, we have those customers that will give a great experience. And I don't think by any means they're like lying to people and being like, yeah, it's the greatest ever. But, they're willing to take the time to like give positivity into what we're doing, but also understand that feedback is so vital.
Yeah.
And that's genuinely why I laughed is because I just talked to a customer earlier today that pretty much was like, hey, I love this machine, fix it. And when I walked him through the fix, he was like, yep, I knew you would help me. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it made me think of that of like, man, it is, it really is very rare for somebody to say, hey man, I love what you're doing and I believe in you enough to push you to do better.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's probably about time.
I think
we're a little past time.
That clock doesn't work.
We are probably going to have to shoot Logan tomorrow because Evan is not a stay late boy like me and Logan are. Evan has a wonderful wife at home that cares when he arrives. I don't. I think Logan's wife works, but nobody cares if I come home. So is there anything that you wanted to share on the Comeback podcast, on the announcement of a regular cycle? You are the guy in charge, for better or worse. I'm on the podcast more. So if you have anything that you wanted to share with anybody or push, or whatever you want to do, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think we got a lot going on this school. I know Charlie was talking about that, and I really think that the school is a real gem of opportunity, and so I'm excited to see us really engage our local community. We've got some awesome local partners that we're going to start working with this year. So Cole School is just like it was a passion for me, but it was a passion for Andy. I just want to see that. I want to see that help as many people as possible. And I want people to come and use those free resources. Like, we do our IBA classes. I'd love to see 50, 60 people here.
We had probably 30, 35
Yeah.
a couple January.
Yeah.
And it was awesome.
Yeah.
Like-
well, and once you get that much energy in the room, there's not an open station for every person. So people have to pair up.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you've got this conversation going and it's just, I think I obviously want Cole to be successful, but ultimately what I'm hoping to be a part of is a reinvigoration of manufacturing. And I want that to be in the United States, but it's if that's in Canada and Mexico and other places too, I want people to be building things. The world needs less critics. It needs more makers. Yeah. And so, I hope to do that. My 5 kids better do that. And
Oliver criticizes me every time I talk to him. So he finds
boy.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Picks me apart. All right. Well,
One more thing for the folks that are in the Indiana Blacksmithing Association, the IBA does have scholarships for blacksmithing classes. Take advantage of that if you're a member.
Yeah.
They are accepted here.
And
also
you can see the schedule and all that also.
be 100% ready to black this out, Evan, if I'm not right. If your scholarship is close and we're a little bit above your scholarship, email me. We'll figure out how to make it work.
God. You mean within
A couple hundred bucks.
$10,000, right?
Yeah. We can wiggle. It's a $90,000 class, but I'll take $10. Now, if you're within a couple $100 and your scholarship is, close, email me and we'll figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, that sounds kosher.
So
Cool. All right.
cool. Well, let's move on to Logan. Even if I change shirts, you'll know why, guys. Everybody I'm talking to is
You're
too
not changing your shirt
too
tomorrow.
boisterous.
It's going to be the same outfit. Even if you change shirts, it's just going to be that shirt again.
You know me too. All right. Back on in tomorrow with Logan.
Au revoir.
All right. Section 3 of the podcast, we did Charlie first. We talked about the school. We talked about his adventure in getting hired at Coal Iron Works. And then we talked to Nathan kind of about some of the things that are coming up that we're excited about, a little bit about the core values of Coal Iron Works. Once again, if you are interested in the history of Coal Iron Works, how we got started, kind of our trajectory and what our core values and our mission is. We did do a podcast, The History of Coal Iron Works, when we first started this. 2 things, go back and watch that. B, if it's not sufficient, let us know. We can do another History of Coal Iron Works, which is a little bit more in depth and we can cover.
We should do a listen along. We re-listen to that episode and comment on it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Kind of like the Boy Meets World thing that's going on right now.
Yeah.
Everybody's mad at them.
Sure.
Because 2 of them don't get along. All right. And that's popular culture from Coal Iron Works. So let us know if we need to go a little bit in depth. Also, let us know if there's something in that episode it's 2 episodes. In one of those episodes that you want us to dive deeper into. I know that when we talk about the Nestle Ring project, a lot of people have a lot of questions about that. Let us know your questions. We can go more into depth of what it's like to scale. During COVID, we scaled very quickly, and we know how not to do it, and we know a couple of ways that we do it a little bit better moving forward as we continue to try to grow our business. But all that to be said, I'm kind of acting like this is a new episode. It's not. I've said the same 5 things at the beginning of every little segment here, but we're launching it full time. Let us know what you want to see. This segment is going to belong to Mr. Logan Gillahan. This is our engineer. He's a man on an island for us. He is a one-man department. He is responsible for making sure that your press meets safety standards. He is responsible for some redesigns on the press that we did. He's responsible for the H-frame. He has helped bring the induction forges into fruition with some valuable feedback about what we were expecting. Also very important in the testing process, as me and Nathan are qualified to just shove things into it and see if it explodes, and you understand things a little bit better about why that would happen. And also for the power hammer and the first, from what we understand, the first official drawings of a K75. K75s when we bought it.
First digital drawings, at least.
First digital drawings. When we bought it, we're so happy to have the K75 in our lineup. If you grew up in our age group, roughly 35 to 45, I Forged Iron was everything. And a lot of those guys looked up to Grant Sarver and Bob at Postville. And K75 was kind of their machine. And when we bought it, it was very much that mentality of like, we know how to make it. So we make it.
We learned how to make it from a manual machine, guys who have been doing it the same way for 20 years method.
Right.
And there's been quite a bit of adaptation to produce a similar or really the same machine, just in an entirely different way.
Yeah. So it's something really cool, actually. There is something really cool about the way they were making the K75, and we'll talk about that. But
Sure.
You talk about tribal knowledge in business, and that's all it was. If they had lost Dieter at any step of the progress, K75s wouldn't exist anymore.
Yeah, they would have gone extinct.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But Logan is also responsible for the self-contained power hammer that we will have fully released this year. We have 2 and 3 fixing to get built and shipped out, which are our kind of not where the hammer is going to finally forever finish, obviously, because we're still making adaptations to the press and upgrades and updates. But this, we've got to a good landing spot. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And we will, we'll kind of explore what you're doing to make sure that we have an evergreen product line.
Yeah.
But just in case the listeners did not listen to the full episode, once again, calling back to go back and listen to it, the full episode of how you got here, who you are, just give us a quick 2-minute breakdown of who you are, what you do, and why you live in Indiana all of a sudden.
Yeah. So I joined the team, gosh, it's going to be 4 years in September. That's insane. I joined the team September of 2021. The year previous to that, I had been Cole was my client. So I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, just outside of Portland, Oregon. I went to school at Oregon State University, studied mechanical engineering, and at my first job after graduating, I was an automation engineer. And so that was kind of right at the outset of COVID. A lot of stuff slowed down, and we had a lot of free time. And so I was kind of given a lot of freedom for my own projects to do in between other like client projects. And so my boss gave me free reign to kind of develop something on my own if I wanted to, and especially if I could find someone to sell it to, that would be even better. And so I kind of had the idea to put it's something that has been done in heavy industry for a very long time.
Sure.
But to scale down an industrial control to put on a forging press per se. And my background from the forging perspective is that I've been a knife maker for honestly a decade at this point. Mostly stock removal stuff is my background, but through getting connected with Steve Schwarzer down in Florida and a couple other people, I joined the ABS, and kind of that bladesmithing background is what led me to blacksmithing. So it went like knife making, then bladesmithing, and from bladesmithing to blacksmithing, versus people just like, I feel like usually get started in like the blacksmithing side of things and go the other direction.
Yeah, you fall in love with hitting hot steel, and then you
Right.
fall in love with sharp objects.
Yeah, right.
Sure.
When I got started making knives, I was like, I'm never going to forge. Why would I ever do that? That just seems messy. And now it's like, that's all I want to do. And power hammers are honestly to blame for that for the most part. But anyway, so that's my background. We developed the digital press controller from 2020 to 2021. Mm-hmm. And then right as we were getting ready to launch the controller, I left that position, and Cole brought me out to Indiana. So picked up my whole life and the dog, who may or may not be on the thumbnail of this section of the podcast, moved out here, and we've been hanging out and building stuff ever since. So.
All right, cool. So, just to get a little bit deeper into who you are, mm-hmm. What is it that, obviously you had reached out to us and said, hey, I'm pretty sure I can build a controller for you guys. And Nate and Andy were like, that's wild because we've been trying to do that and been
With two other companies. Yeah.
And we're getting quotes back for like 40 grand, 50 grand, 60 grand. And it's like, guys, like what you're doing is super cool, but it's a non-starter, right?
Yeah.
And then you reach out and you're like, hey, I think I can do it for a price point that's achievable. Not only that, but I'm also familiar with your machine. You familiar to the point where you were going to build a ripoff for your forging club, which is totally acceptable. I'm not saying that in like a negative way. If you want to build your own forging press and you have the skills and equipment to do so, that's fine. I'm not throwing any shade for that. But
And by ripoff, you mean I built a trapezoid shaped base for a log splitter.
right? Yeah, there's nothing that we do with the C-frame design that's like revolutionary or even patented or anything like that.
No,
So
it appears that way because the hobbyist market for those and the DIY builds have all like CNC machining is usually not accessible. And so things like adjustable gibs and wear bronze and all that kind of stuff, that's super standard in even small industry. Like that's a no brainer. That's usually not even remotely accessible to the hobbyist user who all they have is a stick welder and, angle grinder, which don't get me wrong. That's all you need to build a press.
That was our first 10.
Yeah, exactly. That will totally go to work. But after a decade of development, ours is more like scaled down version of something you would see industrially.
Right.
But
yeah,
it appears revolutionary, but it's really not,
So you're familiar with our machines and you're like, hey, I think I can do this controller thing. You reach out and they're like, yeah, well, I need it for it doesn't need to be $12, but I need it as something that somebody that's buying a $6,000, $7,000 machine doesn't look at it and say, why is it 10 times more than the machine? So you work through this project. We get it to where, like you said, we're about to launch it. You leave that company. What was it that flipped it, clicked in your brain that said, hey guys, would you be okay with me moving to Indiana? What was that kind of thought process in your mind? Because I come from a company that was from the Pacific Northwest. They were based in Everett, and we would go to the Monmouth Valley, Meowth, whatever that is, up in the Cascades every year. If I was born and raised there, I think it would take a lot to get me out of that area. It's beautiful. It's expensive. It's all get out, but it's beautiful, and just being able to walk out your back door and seeing that kind of nature we don't have in Indiana.
Yeah,
so
totally.
What was that? What was that thought process like in your mind, and what was the click over that was like, yeah, I'm doing this. I'm moving to flat ground.
To flatland. Yeah, no, most people, that first year that I lived here, when I told them that I moved here from Oregon, were like, why?
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that? And like, don't get me wrong, I miss the mountains and the trees for sure. And I love going home and visiting family and getting a chance to go kind of like recharge in that sense. But I mean, it's opportunity, man. Like I was young and single, and it was kind of just a chance for me to strike out on my own away from my family. Not that I have anything not that I wouldn't love to be close to them, but it's just the adventure was too enticing, to put it one way.
Sure. So your adventure, instead of, there's the old head west, son adage, yours was head east.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, to be honest. And it's like, I mean, it's a dream job. As far as an engineer's perspective, like, I'm going to have tools at my disposal to do things in a way that I would have taken me a very long time to develop on my own. And it was something I was super interested in. And anytime like you have an opportunity to take your hobby, like, I shouldn't say it like a blanket statement like that. For me, I had an opportunity to take a hobby / side hustle and do it full time without taking the soul out of my side hustle, because it was a different thing. Okay. If that makes sense. Yeah. So I was able to participate in the industry that I love, in the community that I love, from both sides. And in a lot of ways, still being able to do, and don't get me wrong, there's give and take there, but like I was still able to make knives like as a side hustle and as my own thing, and still have something that I can put my name on like publicly. But I also was still able to take my 9 to 5 and invest in the same area while still being able to keep it contained in a 9 to 5 that I can clock off and go home and still, I don't know, have it both ways
Right.
in a kind of a rare way. So that was super enticing for sure. It's just like, there's no part of this job that's dead end to me or means to an end. Like
Sure,
I'm
yeah.
super invested in the outcome of what we're doing beyond like a paycheck.
Yeah.
Which is, you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, right?
We work every day.
Or something like that.
We work every day.
Yeah.
So you come, you decide to make this crossover. I think that's a wonderful kind of way to look at it. I remember talking to Larson a year ago, 6 months ago, whatever, last time he was up here maybe. And when you get on those like one-on-ones and he gets very like kind of sentimental and maybe not sentimental, but he asks questions that on the surface don't seem very deep, but then he keeps kind of breaking it down. We were talking about blacksmithing and what got me into blacksmithing. And if Nathan had never lit a forge with me, would I ever have been a blacksmith? And a lot of actually really good questions that I don't know the answer to. I don't know if I would have had another friend that was like, hey, come do this with me. I've met all the other blacksmiths I know through Nathan.
Right.
Maybe Andy and Dave would have had me come over, but at that time they were doing a lot of stock removal, which, as everybody knows, I'm not the biggest fan of. So they had me work on projects. They'd be like, hey, grind these into discs. And I would do that. And then they would never get used. I think they just wanted me to feel involved. But Nathan actually had me working on projects. So we talked about that and stuff. But at one point, like, it was like, man, how do I explain this? I would have never called myself a blacksmith before I started at Coal Iron Works. I started at Coal Iron Works and I started doing it on a daily basis. And then, now that's kind of dropped down to maybe once a week or every other week. But I started working on my own projects, getting into, now it's not, I go into a forge and work on what everybody else is and try to kind of be the helper. Now I can walk into a forge and say, I really want to make this candle maker today, or I want to make this chalk holder, or like things that catch my attention I can work on myself. And the way that I broke it down to Larson was kind of, we're in Indiana. There's the basketball team, the Pacers. You can be a Pacers fan. That doesn't make you a basketball player. You can be a Pacers fan who goes and plays pickup basketball in the neighborhood basketball court every week. That doesn't make you a professional basketball player. So when I first started, I feel like I was more of a Pacers fan. And then now I'm in the realm where I was a Pacers fan, and then I started playing pickup basketball. And I wouldn't consider myself a Pacer, like a professional basketball player.
Okay.
So my trajectory has kind of been like, well, I really like blacksmithing. I think it's super cool. I read a lot of books on it. I'm also like really big into history. So how it weaves into history is really interesting to me. But I never consider myself a blacksmith. You coming into the industry, considering yourself a knife maker, not just consider you are a knife maker, but how was that? How was that transition from I go to college full time and I'm going to be a knife maker and kind of my focus is on being a knife maker to, I get to go and design equipment for other people to be knife makers as well? This is a very roundabout way to ask this question.
Sure.
But how does that transition go from, because for me, it was like, hey, this is something really cool. This is something some of my best friends started. It's in my hometown. I want to be a part of, I believe in what they're doing. And that only grew an interest that was already there. It seems like for you, it kind of pivoted it to where it was like, instead of just making knives, now I can support the community by making better equipment for other people to make knives. Was that kind of part of the influence or part of the decision-making there?
As far as the move is concerned?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
No, yeah. I think that, when I got started making knives, not that an Instagram bio is a good summary of who someone is, but I had in my Instagram bio on my knife making page, aspiring knife maker. For like 4 years. I had made a couple hundred knives. I had sold a whole bunch of knives, or a whole bunch of those. And for whatever reason, like, I wasn't willing to give myself the credibility to call myself a knife maker. I was still an aspiring knife maker.
Right.
Which in hindsight is a little silly because, it's like, what defines that? Like, at what point, do you pass a threshold that, like, there's no universal standard for like, okay, now you're Now you're a knife maker. Now you're a blacksmith.
Right.
You know,
Right.
There are a lot of people that I've met that I would call engineers that have never gone to school. You know what I mean? Like there's,
Like Jeff Williams.
yeah,
Like
yeah. So like, yeah, totally. Guys like that have that mind, that have that mind for like design and dimensions and numbers and math, and they can pick up on really complicated concepts really easily. That would have soared through engineering school that just never decided to go. You know, and they're self-taught and they've built wonderful mechanisms or wonderful inventions. Even if it's just, I mean, some blacksmiths were the engineers.
Yeah, they had to be.
Before we had engineers, right? They were the centers of communities. And if you needed something made, whether it was supposed to be pretty or whether it was supposed to be functional, oftentimes both, you went to the blacksmith.
Right.
And so there's kind of a camaraderie there that is humbling in a way, of like, this is my, like I had that automation job for, you know, I was there for a little over a year, but like, this is the longest term job I've had since I left school, and I'm a one-man department. Like, I don't claim to know anything. I have the skill sets that I've developed, and I've had the things that I've learned thus far, and I'm trying to apply those the best ways that I can. But like, I don't have a 50-year tenured engineer that I can go ask.
Right.
The closest thing I have to that is the guy that sits behind me in church, like who was an engineer at GM for 50 years. And so a lot of this, and honestly, that was like one of the appeals to Cole, was like how much of a bootstrap company it was. It was a little more approachable.
I don't think we're supposed to use that term anymore. I think it's been connected to political activism.
Well, whatever. As much of a DIY, make it happen.
It's a self-starter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Everybody here
startup.
has to be a self-starter.
Yeah, and so that appealed to me. You know, Nathan and I are kindred spirits in that way, in a lot of ways, and that was a huge component of the people that I met here. Of like, oh yeah, this is a team that I can get behind. Like Nathan is the captain of a ship that I would be happy rowing for.
Right.
You know, and so that was a huge part of it. Of like, if it was a big soulless corporation, then you know, I'm not moving to Indiana to go work for
Borg Warner.
Yeah, to go work for GM, to go work for, I mean, there's a Rolls-Royce plant here, which would be super cool to have that on a resume. It's not worth moving to Indiana from Oregon.
No.
But a company like Cole, with what they're doing in an industry that I'm super passionate about, and the opportunity to like, oh, this is something I want in my own shop. Yeah, now I get to develop it and everyone can have one.
Well, I think the difference too that's offered there, if you take in the idea of like in Indiana, we do have a few companies that are kind of based out of here.
Yeah.
RCA had a huge plant here. GM just recently left the Anderson area, as we've talked about a lot. You know, Borg Warner and even Nicholson File. But anyway, those are companies where you go join an engineering team.
Yeah.
And we have a buddy who's an engineer, Eric Himker, and he's designing car seats.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, dude, it's super cool to say, oh, I helped build the, I don't know, is the Camaro still made? I helped build the Camaro SS, but you had to design car seats for 2 years. Like, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, you have a very small part in something huge and famous.
Yeah.
But you have claim to one part, which
Right.
is still awesome. You know, there's guys that I know that have parts that they designed in outer space. I don't have that. There's no way I would have that unless we got really, really good at something we don't do all of a sudden.
Really quick.
Really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it's a double-edged sword, right? On one hand, it would be really nice to have a full team working on the self-contained hammer. On the other hand, I get to look at that machine and be like, I physically assembled and built that whole thing from scratch,
Right.
let alone did all the CAD modeling, let alone pulled together as much as I could, you know, and have gone through so many revisions. And I mean, that thing is 2.0 is a completely different machine than the hammer that people have seen
Right.
on social media, which is why we've been silent about it for 18 months.
Well, we haven't been silent for 18 months. We've been silent for the past probably 6 months, pretty actively and intentionally silent.
Yeah.
We were running ad campaigns and all this stuff. And then for the past probably 6 months, we've dialed back on that intentionally.
Yeah.
But I going back to your point of like, it would be nice to have a full team working on this.
Sure.
Yeah, dude, it absolutely would be. But I also think that's where things become soulless. And one of my favorite things about what we do, and we talked about it with Nathan yesterday, or I guess it was last night because we took so long to do it, but is the community involvement in what we're doing. Mm-hmm. You are a one-man engineer, but you also have to be the ears for the entire community. So when we took the hammer to Quad State, we were like, hey guys, tell us what you think. We had so many people that were like, hey guys, this is awesome. This is great. Have a good time. We had people that ran it that were like, mom told me if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And then we had guys who were really, truly invested in what we were doing. And they were like, hey, like, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
This needs to change.
Right.
And you very quickly had to learn on the spot how to have that communication. And instead of saying, well, like, that's the hammer I designed, deal with it, how to be graceful and say like, oh, wow, that is a good point. Is that what you expect out of a hammer? Yeah. And then the next guy would come up and say the exact opposite. And then you would say, oh, wow, that's a great point. Sure. Is that what you expect out of a hammer? Yeah, and we had to listen to all of this input.
Yeah.
And you were able to dissect that and say, you know, even if this, like the big component for me is the super long throat on it. Yeah. It was like, that was something we really thought was going to be a seller. Yeah. That was going to be awesome. Yeah. And we've taken that away.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is based on feedback where people are like, why? You know?
Yeah. The cost to the machine function versus like the feature that it gave was, it didn't add up. It didn't add up. And I think to your point of taking that feedback, especially from anything like Quad State when we kind of launched it and then forward, like a helpful aspect of that is that the negative or constructive feedback that we got on the machine was nothing we didn't already know.
Yeah.
We have been our own, and I especially have been our own worst critic when it comes to the functionality of that machine. And so it kind of becomes this toss-up of like, you know, it's never going to be good enough as far as I'm concerned. So where do we draw the line between letting the public know what we're working on and giving them an opportunity to say, hey, that's good enough for my use. Let me get that in my shop and I can give you feedback as well, or whatever, you know? And that was something that was kind of a big pivot point for me in that specific development process, is the idea of like, it doesn't have to be perfect on the first try. Yeah. It has to work. It has to be good. It has to be quality. It has to do something of value in someone's shop.
Right.
But the perfectionist in me was really struggling with that. And so I think that with where we're at now, being able to take that feedback, and everyone has been encouraging, you know, and I think some of the most valuable feedback that I got were from people who own or have owned multiple
big
like
boys,
Nazels and Chambersburgs and, you know, the old era hammers who know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
That have hours and hours, hundreds, thousands of hours under a hammer that look at that machine and say, you don't have it yet, but you guys are on the right track. And when you do, it's going to be awesome.
Right.
It's like that's gas in my tank to keep going.
For me, there's two guys that said that. Cause you know, I had 2 hours on a power hammer when we first started the project. Cause I work and have been involved with a press company.
Yeah.
And before that I had worked on a little mechanical hammer that was not safe for humans to operate.
Yep.
And I think it's up at Nate Runnell's shop now. But two of the people that stick out to me are Chris and Kurt when they tried it at Quad State. And those are two of the guys that like really have a lot of time on hammers.
Oh yeah. And Matt Harris too.
And Matt Harris. Yeah. And for them to walk away and exactly what you just said is like, guys, this is super dope.
Yeah.
Keep me in the loop though, because there's some things that we should talk.
Yeah.
And then Kurt coming up and doing a demonstration and making tongs and an anvil.
Yeah,
and
forging
all
a small
stuff,
anvil on it. Yeah.
And pretty much telling everybody like, shut up and get to work. Like, you know, like,
yeah, for sure.
Those experiences were where it was like, you know, when we first started it, it was like, okay, like this is going to be super cool. But then seeing the reaction of the community to a hammer that we admittedly were like, hey guys, we're going to have to stop and fix this halfway through.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, luckily it quit literally an hour before we packed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we know that this is gonna blow itself apart. People
Yeah.
were like, yeah, let's make that happen. And they tried and they were successful. But
Yeah. Luckily, it wasn't. Yeah, it was something very small. But yeah.
But you know, and then taking it to Maker Camp, the same thing. Like they were having a couple issues and they were able to fix it on the ground.
Yeah, it ran really well at Maker Camp. And I mean, the hammer that we have, the same machine, serial number 1, that's in the classroom right now, is the same body that was at Quad State. And the motor and crank system's been redesigned. The compressor cylinder's been replaced. There's an entirely different valve system in it. There's an entirely different ram cylinder in it. Like, it's a totally different machine.
Yeah.
That's a 60-pound hammer. The one at Quad State was 37 pounds. It's the same machine. And that's just like the surface layer of the number of iterative like changes that we've made to and it's not just a functionality thing. Some of it's just manufacturing.
Yeah.
Like the first valve had a 7/8 honed bore that was 8 inches long. And when I did it, one of them in aluminum, it was fine. When we tried to do 5 of them out of steel, it was very not fine.
Yeah.
So just finding ways that we can build them to help keep that cost down so that when we do finally bring it to market, it's not a $40,000 machine. It's little stuff like that that's like, I guess the long and short of it is that all of this weight is going to be worth it.
Yeah.
You
So,
know?
you know, I think we do a really good job of both like kind of exposing where we failed at and where we had to upgrade. And then we also do a good job of talking about what we're excited about with the hammer. But something we don't really talk about often is like, there's sometimes we want to do stuff that is just not available anymore.
Yeah.
Like a 26-inch flywheel.
Yeah.
Try getting a 26-inch flywheel cut in your local area and email us the cost.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
We can't do that. So we have to figure a workaround
Right.
because the product we want to design, like you said, would cost $40,000 and nobody wants even a 100-pound hammer for $40,000. It's like, no, not even close.
Even though that's like what they cost back in the day.
Yeah.
But we're not a industrial forge shop.
Right.
You know?
So and specializing in residential power, it's like we don't have a lot of guys that just have $40,000 to have sit in the corner of their garage for their hobby.
Right.
You know, so we want to make a machine that will make you more money than you spend on it.
Absolutely.
That's goal number 1.
Yeah.
So when we think about products that we're releasing, that is very high up on the list of like, hey guys, if this is more than X amount, it's a non-starter.
Yeah.
And we look at, you know, how much does this brand cost? What's its functionality?
Yeah.
What is this resale on this brand that's not made anymore that everybody's looking at? You know, one thing we look at a lot is the Nazels, the Chambersburgs, those vintage models.
Yeah.
And we want to be comparative function to them without somebody having to go and pay somebody $30,000 to rebuild it.
Sure.
So what are some of the things we can kind of pivot there a little bit?
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you're most excited about with the Hammer 2.0 that people can look forward to as far as functionality goes?
So a big one is mass. So the first anvil on the first hammer, we did that entirely in-house. And we don't have a CNC that can machine the end of a 30-inch long piece of 10-inch round. Right. And so that was a piece of 1-inch pipe. And then there was a 10-inch thick solid like cap on top of that pipe. And that allowed us to do the proof of concept. I knew going into it that we were going to need to fix that, but it was just, you know, we had so many other questions that we need answered on the overall functionality of the machine that we didn't want to invest the time and money to have that done. We have since, because of taking on the KA75, had custom tooling made to be able to machine dovetails more efficiently so that we're not having to tilt the heads of Bridgeports. Little improvements like that has allowed us in a lot more cost-effective way to go to someone local that has a big horizontal mill that can do that big of stock, and we have anvils that are 100% solid.
Yeah.
So that was like one of those things where it's like, we know this is wrong, but it's at least we can put a pin in it and deal with a bunch of other stuff.
It's something
and then
that's
circle
easily
back to it.
fixed down the road.
Yeah.
You know, it's
once
literally
it's time to actually produce these.
right.
Versus just one-off prototypes.
Yeah.
So we have solid anvils now. The plate thickness is heavier, but we're just increasing overall mass underneath the frame, which is going to make it, honestly, like, yeah, it's going to, inertial mass is always going to help like it work your material more efficiently.
Yeah.
It's also going to make it sound better. It's not going to sound hollow like
Yeah.
our first one does. So that's going to be nice. Second thing is the motor and crank system, hopefully, is a lot more reliable. It's been completely redesigned. It's going to be easier to work on. There's going to be more inertial mass. There's going to be a better like crank ratio or gear ratio. The compressor cylinder is bigger. The ram cylinder is bigger. The ram is heavier. So we started out, my initial design concept before I had, like as I was putting pen to paper, like when I thought of like the product I wanted it to be and started constructing a roadmap of how to get there, was I wanted a self-contained version of a 25-pound Little Giant. I wanted a 25-pound hammer. I wanted to hit 375 beats a minute, and I wanted it to be about the same price as a KA75.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't call it scope creep because it's not that like it's just our goals changed. We needed a heavier RAM.
Yeah.
We had 375 beats a minute for a self-contained, which just didn't work.
Well, I think that's one of
Like-
the things that like we talked about, we had to stop and ask ourselves, is the community asking for a 25-pound self-contained?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
is that what people
Right.
want?
Right. And the answer was, I mean, we never even really got a chance to answer that because we weren't able, for a number of reasons, not only from the design of the machine, but also just like what it was going to cost us to build them. Like the thing is if it was a $4,000 hammer, sure, why not? 25-pound Little
Sure,
Giants
yeah.
go for that much if they're in decent shape. But for what it was going to cost us to build the thing, it was only going to cost us an extra couple $100 to do a 70-pound RAM.
Right.
Right? Because we have so much upfront infrastructure and overhead and like just what it costs to build the machine, adding a little bit more steel here or there is kind of negligible. So,
Right.
you know, it's gone from a 25-pound super fast, like basically bladesmithing hammer
Yeah.
to, you know, I'm not going to make any claims here because I haven't seen the new version of it running yet. We're still building it. But like this, as far as specs are concerned, it's a lot closer to what people would have seen out of like a 1B from Nazel. It's like a 66 to 70-pound RAM, 8-inch stroke, about 1,300 pounds in the anvil and base, depending on, you know, 1-piece or 2-piece model, whatever. So that size hammer is where we've landed. And you go back and you look at all the old catalogs and you kind of realize that like, oh, that's kind of where everyone has, like, that's kind of where they start. You know, Ryder and say Hindlers, they have some smaller stuff. Obviously the Anyang 33,
Yeah.
at one point Anyang had like a 22-pound or like a 10 kilogram hammer
Yeah.
that they didn't really advertise. Like you can go smaller. It's just the faster you hit, the harder it is to dial them in from everything that I've seen. So anyway, all that to be said, I'm super stoked to be, you know, by no means like replacing the need for or matching the performance of the 1B, but like hopefully, you know, that's what we're aspiring to,
Right.
in that sense.
Right.
So
So you mentioned the K75 kind of
Yeah.
exposed a little bit about how we could make our hammer better.
yeah, totally.
And we have been so long-winded with every guest. I feel the need to transfer gears here so that we're not here because there's
a lot we could talk
there's
about.
4 hours of what has changed in the past year.
Yeah, totally.
With not just the power hammer, but with everything in the shop, we have grown and we've progressed, and we took a lineup of presses, and in the past year we have quadrupled our product offering.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
So we went up to Postville. We learned from Dieter. I didn't go, but you learned from Dieter how to build this, and it was kind of one of those scenarios where, like you said, if Dieter ever got sick or left the company or
Yeah,
anything,
totally.
there would be no such thing as a K75.
Sure.
Because the young man that bought the Postville blacksmith shop from Bob when Bob retired
Yeah.
was like, hey, I love blacksmithing and I love ornamental iron. No part of me wants to build machines.
No, he was taking it commercial.
Yeah.
So he was pivoting kind of the target trajectory of the business itself. And he offloaded hammers, he offloaded machinery, and the whole KA75 part of that business he sold. Yeah.
So when we got and you know, I want to make it very, very, very clear. This is not, I'm not trying to diminish what they were doing. When we bought the company, supply lists were literally just receipts of what they had
Yeah.
purchased and like, hey,
Yeah.
you just need to buy this again.
Like
we
you said,
had,
it was tribal knowledge.
yeah. And it was very effective. That doesn't work for the way that our business is set up with liability insurance, and we have to, some of that stuff. Like if anybody ever gets hurt on our machine, we have to turn those drawings
Or
in.
just there's a different person ordering parts than there is machining those parts.
Yeah.
Or assembling those parts.
Yeah. So the first thing
have
we
an
had to
MRP
do,
system.
the first thing we had to do was take tribal knowledge, which were drawn on a Subway napkin for at least one part that I know of.
Yeah, a literal subway.
A
napkin.
literal Subway napkin drawing. And we had to make those in digital. And then we had to come up with BOMs, and then we had to learn how to order them, where to order them from.
Yep.
If we have the ability
Suppliers
to
that
manufacture
don't
them.
exist anymore,
Exactly.
finding new suppliers, all that stuff.
Was it the springs that
Yeah.
they had purchased like in the 1980s and were enough to get us through
the
5 years?
Springs and seals were both things that we had to go to. And I mean, they were standard offerings,
Mm-hmm.
so finding a replacement wasn't that big of a deal. But, we had a cardboard box that, as far as Postville was concerned, they were never going to see the bottom of that cardboard box.
Yeah.
We had to figure out how to replace those
And
items.
I think being able to build machines at the scale that they were building K75s, because as soon as we bought it, people come out of the woodwork. Oh, I've had a K75 for 10 years. I've had a K75 for, I got this guy's K. And it was like, I didn't realize
Yeah.
how many people own them.
Yeah.
So people come out of the woodwork. It's amazing to me that at the scale they were selling them, they were able to operate off that. I think that is genuinely super cool.
Yeah.
But the first step we had to do was come up with drawings, parts list, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
And so for anybody out there that's wondering why it's taken us so long to launch the K75s, it's because we've had to be intentional about every step of the way and making sure that we do it right. Because we didn't buy a company that was in like doing it,
Right.
We bought 5 machines, and then the guy that built those 5 machines taught us how he built them.
Right.
So we had to come up with processes and suppliers and all this fun stuff. But all that to be said, what are some of the things that K75 kind of exposed that impacted our power hammer, and what's some of the crossover there? Because I know we've talked a few times where you're like, as soon as we got the K70, like this just made sense.
Yeah, totally. A huge one, like I mentioned earlier, was the dovetails. So the K75 is a 7-degree dovetail, which you'd see on like a Chambersburg or something like that. And we originally were at 5 degrees because that matched a Nazel, which it's 6 to 1 half dozen the other. It really doesn't matter. But because we were going to be making the KAs at such a scale, not only are we having the machine dovetails in the ram and anvil caps for the KAs, but obviously there's dovetails in all of the dies, and there's keys and all of this stuff. There's 7-degree tapers everywhere, and there's no way that we're going to run that for us. At Postville, it's all manual machines. There's no CNC in that shop, and they have fixtures set up to run everything, and they're only doing about 10 hammers a year, at least at the point when we took on the design. So for us, we have to make these in situ on top of everything else that we're keeping up to date and all these other press parts and stuff that we're machining in-house. We've got half a dozen vertical machining centers that we're running. We have one Bridgeport on the floor now that the guys honestly don't even really have to use anymore.
Yeah.
Like CNCing dovetails was mandatory. Like it was a non-question on whether or not we could get around that. Like it had to happen.
We had to do it.
And I don't know if you know this, but you can't tilt the head on a Fadal.
Yes, I'm very aware. Yeah.
So having a custom solid carbide 7-degree dovetail end mill made was like, oh, wait, now we can actually mass produce this stuff and hold tighter tolerances with it and have better repeatability with that, which is not only going to let us service the anywhere from 200 to 600, we're not really sure, KAs that are out there all the way back from Grant Sarver days, because the machine hasn't changed since Grant Sarver designed it. And so, there's 25 years of KAs that we have to service on top of building new ones.
It's a weird product for us to get into because we have the first 10 were like steel on steel and kind of rough
presses.
Yeah. And then after that, we went to the impregnated bronze, and like we have some iterations.
Yeah.
But we're also talking about being in business for 10 years. And until the past 5 years, it was like more kind of the case, Tyler, where it's like we're sending 2 presses out a week.
Yeah.
3 presses out a week, right? Now that we are kind of at the size we are, and I almost said thank God for COVID. I don't mean that like thank God for COVID, but COVID really kind of
it was
exposed people to
explosive.
hobbies.
Yeah.
And it's not just in blacksmithing. Every hobby experienced a boom.
Yeah.
So we're at the inventory level and the sales level that we are now, honestly, kind of thanks to COVID. So we're talking about servicing a machine that's been made since I was about 2 years old.
Right.
From what I understand. And
made the exact same way.
Yeah. And there's like 3 of them that Grant had built for buddies before it became the KA, where it was like, hey guys, I built this single blow hammer, and other guys were like, I kind of want that. And then about the 5th one, he was like, I should just sell these.
Yeah, right.
That's kind of my understanding of how it came to fruition.
Sure.
If I'm wrong, call me out. If any of you guys listening know the real story, let me know. But we have to service almost 40 years of machines. And we've never had that problem. Not only that, but we have to service machines we didn't build.
Right.
So it's been a
we couldn't
weird,
change the dovetail to some. We couldn't go to
Yeah.
a tenon system, or not that you would want that in a hammer anyway. But like there was no. We had to form to the process or to the product.
Yes.
We could not change it. I suppose we could have, but that would have ditched everyone that already had one.
Yeah.
And so we really wanted to maintain that consistency and stay true to the original design as best as we can.
Mm-hmm.
And any modifications that we have or will make will be like backwards compatible, if that makes sense. Like, because we want to stay so like true to.
Well, the only variable that I can think of even is that 5/8 11 hole for top tooling.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah. There's
Some of
some
them
other
have it
stuff
and
that
some
are
of them
like,
don't.
Right. And there's even stuff like how the cylinders are held into the machine that is like, it's a really complicated, it's a good, effective way of doing it, but it's really complicated. But if we're going to make an update to that, we'll design it in the context with which it would be a drop-in upgrade, not a like total redesign of the machine. So that people who need machines rebuilt or want to update it or whatever, they still can. But in the terms of like the dovetails, switching to 7 degrees and having those custom cutters made, that is allowing us to do the coal hammer stuff. And the goal with all of these dies, KAs and coal hammers, which won't be cross-compatible, but like product families, they won't be cross-compatible across product families. But the idea is that hopefully you'll have one key and you can throw any, like you can buy dies off the shelf and you don't have to fit them to your machine.
Yeah.
Like you would buying an older self-contained or any hammer for that matter. So those are the kind of improvements that like, that's super small, but as far as the guys who are building them and machining them, super like effective improvement as far as quality of life is concerned.
Yeah.
Another thing is that, I don't know if people don't really realize this, but the guide tubes on the K75 are air cylinders.
Yeah.
And those are a complete custom design. They're built from scratch in-house. And that was something that we would have never touched before. The initial coal hammer was all off-the-shelf pneumatics. And to get to the size that we need with the coal hammer, as far as cylinder bores go,
We needed a custom cylinder.
well, the prices just go through the roof.
Oh, okay.
So the compressor cylinder that is in the new hammer is a 6-inch diameter cylinder. And an off-the-shelf cylinder, before modifying it the way that we need to modify it, is $1,000. Now, sure, we could probably find something a little bit cheaper than that, but at that price point, we can start from scratch now that we know what the KAs that are capable of doing, or what that's given us as far as capability, and we can design it exactly how we need it. And honestly, like the price point becomes kind of a wash. But we're getting exactly what we need, and we're not relying on a supply chain thing.
Right.
So little improvements like that, like it seems like a really small thing to understand that, like, oh, you can hone a piece of DOM tubing and turn it into an air cylinder, but like huge for us, specifically with the coal hammer. But,
Right.
Yeah.
So the process with the K75 has been more than just exposing the K75 to us. It's exposed things about the coal hammer. It's exposed, honestly, some of the production processes that we follow, I've been able to
Yeah.
look at the way that we do the K75 and say, okay, does that make sense in other areas?
Sure.
Where traditionally it's been kind of fabrication and then power pack assembly and then
Yeah.
assembly and then paint.
Hydraulics
Where with the K75, it's you kind of just need one guy to build it. If you get two hands on it, it's a little messy, a little too much.
As long as the machined parts are a part of that. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
When Dieter was doing it, he was taking bar stock and spitting out a finished K75 on the other end.
Yeah.
You know, we have broken that down a little bit. But yeah, to your point, like it's a start to finish build, welding, honing, you know, everything is kind of fit, you know, dies aside to the machine itself. And like a rebuild is not, you know, you're not swapping out interchangeable parts necessarily. In some ways, it's more interchangeable sub-assemblies in that sense. And I had a horrible time building the first KA. Like we got all the parts machined and we had them all stacked into a pile, and I went to work and it was awful. And we learned, like I had 70 bullet points in my note of like, oh, this needs to be fixed. We need to do this in this order. This is the part that we're supposed to use. This is the jig from Postville we're supposed to use. Like, I beat my head against a wall for like 4 days building that machine, and it still is like only half works the way that it's supposed to. But Nate is getting ready to fire up the next one that we built in house, and it looks exactly like the ones from Postville. So, it's been a super fun learning experience. And honestly, like circling back to like the beginning of our conversation, like, if I was working for SpaceX, I would be designing parts maybe that realistically I would just be drawing parts that other people have designed. I would just be making drawings for them. But like if I was in a position where I was working for a bigger company, it's like, okay, I'm designing parts that I may never even see the prototype. Like I'd send a drawing off and it would get machined, it would get tested, and that was all be a different part of the engineering department that was doing applications, that was doing T&E, that was doing quality assurance, that was doing like manufacturing processes and all that stuff to get it installed. It's like I might come up with a concept and I know, you know, I'd be lucky to get a closed loop feedback on whether or not it worked well or not.
Yeah. Yeah. You would never even hear about it again.
Let alone, you know, contrast that to here where it's like, oh, I literally saw this from ideation to completion and I was the only one. I won't say I'm the only one that worked on it because, you know, the CNC guys are working their tails off to keep parts moving.
Right.
And when I throw prototypes at them, you know, they rip them out as best that they can to get them back to me. And we have the guys on the floor helping assemble, help troubleshoot. Like the support behind the effort is huge. But
if you do something that doesn't work, it's not word gets back to you. It, at the very least, you hear the explosion, right? For lack of better
was
words.
the one that caused it, i.e. the 45 kilowatt.
So, you know, like you said, your feedback loop isn't just a closed feedback loop where you will always hear about your part.
Yeah. I get to have my hands on every part of the process, and that is like a dream come true for me. If I was stuck behind CAD for 40 hours a week, I would really not
we've
like
done
my
that
job.
to you before.
That's true, but it was only for like a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time. Yeah. If that was my full-time job, that was all I was doing, I would hate my job. The fact that I get to get my hands dirty is a huge part of why I love it here.
We had a floor insurance meeting, and I met with the insurance guy, and I'm going through, these are the kind of machines we run. You know, this is the weight limit to all our cranes, whatever. And he says, okay, how many people do you have on your floor? I said, well, I have 11 employees, and I've got one guy that never walks on the floor. And he goes, okay. And so he says 10. All right. So what does everybody do? I said, okay, well, I have 2 CNC guys. I have an assembly guy. I have a weld. I have paint. I have ship. I have myself, you know, whatever. I'm going through the list. And then I say, and my engineer. And he goes, well, why is your engineer listed? And I said, because he's on the floor. And he acted like shocked and
couldn't wrap
appalled.
his head around the fact that I owned a pair of steel toe boots.
Yeah, he was like, I've never had to write floor insurance for an engineer, and I was like, sorry, man. Like, if Logan hurts himself on the lathe, and then we find out he's not on the insurance to be on the floor, that's going to be an issue.
Like Shiloh and I are the only people who run the lathe.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very strange when you talk to really any industry that like, oh, my computer guys are also making the parts, you know, whether you're a detailer or an engineer or just a drawer, you know, like it's very strange to have somebody who's not just designing the part, but also making it.
Yeah. It's super fun.
It makes you have to be your own worst critic.
Yeah.
So you are one of the few who could actually work in that atmosphere because you're very comfortable critiquing yourself. You're very comfortable coming in. You know, there's been stuff that you've made that are like, hey, what do you think of this? I already hate it, but I want your feedback. I already know the 10 things I'm going to change about it. And you're just waiting for that 11th one. You know, like, but yeah, that's a super cool opportunity that Cole gives, honestly, all of us to be more hands-on in every aspect. And in fact, the fallback of that, you know, most places you work, you have people that get really burnt out. And they come in and they want to clock in at 8 o'clock. They want to leave at 4 o'clock. They want their 30-minute lunch every single break. They want to be sitting down as the buzzer goes off.
Yep.
And here, our biggest issue is telling people like, no, like, I get it. You care, but this is not your cell, you know?
Right, yeah.
So like Landon doesn't need to tell me how to weld something in heavy fab. And not that that's ever been a problem with Landon, but like that's our biggest issue right now is everybody cares so much that it's like, hey, I think I have this improvement. I think I have this improvement. And it's like, all right, guys.
We have orders to ship.
We have orders to ship. And everybody, you know.
The improvements aren't invaluable. We need to get this stuff out the door first.
Right. Yeah. It's like there's a difference between quality of life and like something that's going to make us a ton of money.
Yeah.
You know,
or something that's broken.
And right now in about a month, we know we're heading into our slower season.
Sure.
We know that people kind of slowed. They're buying at the end of the year because they don't want to pay Uncle Sam. They want machines and they can write them off their taxes. The beginning of the year, companies are kind of projecting and saying, "Oh crap, we forgot to get this."
Yeah. Tax season's coming up, so we're gonna have some.
We'll have a little bit
checks and stuff, but
but we're heading into our slower season. Our slower season is where I want all of that. I want people to come up and tell me like, well, if we replace the toilet paper with that blue toilet paper, it's like, that's when I want that stuff. So
what blue toilet paper are you using, Francis?
Scott Shop Towels, of course.
Oh my God.
Why would you not? So that, you know, that being our biggest issue is really cool. It's
totally.
not people not, and I think Nathan and I, we either talked about it in person or on the podcast yesterday, but it's like, we are such a small staff that if one person doesn't pull their weight, it's
noticed
very apparent.
Yeah.
If one person is sick for more than one day, it'll slow down everything.
Just throw it back to September of last year where Nathan had a child. Evan and I both got married within a week of each other.
Right.
And there was no one at the shop for a month.
There was a day that only myself, Shiloh, and Chris were here.
Yeah.
There was 3 people were here.
Yeah.
And that was rough.
That was rough. I had a great time.
I'm sure you did. I'm glad you did. You know what? Good. I still haven't taken the vacation that I was
you
like,
need that.
I was like, when you guys get back, I'm going to take a vacation.
You need that.
That didn't happen. I'll probably have to take a vacation in the next month or so, but
I have a fun question to kind of wrap up this conversation.
Okay,
I'm going to flip the script a little
let's
bit.
go.
What do you want to see come out of R&D over the next, like, once the coal hammer is up and running, 70-pound coal hammer, like what do you want to see come out? Because I know what I want to see, and people tell me all the time what they want to see.
Yeah. So I have perspective from if I was a customer, what I'd want to see, and I also have perspective of as the general manager of Coal Iron Works, what I think will continue to feed families that work at Coal Iron Works. So
fair enough.
So number one, as a coal customer, I think what I would want to see is I would want to see a comprehensive lineup of tooling and dies to support the machine I already own.
Sure.
So if I have a 25 ton, I want to see a full lineup of slot punches, of axe punches and drifts, of work holding, of, you know, we've got coal carts. Can I make a forge stand? Can I make a anvil stand? Can I go to Coal Iron Works and continue to purchase from them in every need in my forge not just for my press.
Everything except propane.
Everything except propane, exactly.
Yep.
That is what I would want as a Coal Ironworks customer because well, I feel like I always have to say this out loud, but I'm not trying to ever disparage any other company that is in our industry. But I also know that in our industry, when you find a supplier that you like that takes care of you, you don't ever want to talk to anybody else. And I have people that call me and they're saying, you know, hey, I know you guys sell drifts for your press. Do you guys make hand drifts? And I'm like, no, but these guys make awesome hand drifts. You should call them. And they're like, but I like you. And like, they're almost mad about it, you know?
Yeah.
So that would be first and foremost is like, I think we're missing a little bit in the market there of people who just want the ease of knowing I have Coal Ironworks phone number. I can call and place an order and I trust them. Mm-hmm. For what I see as being the longevity of the business, I think Shot Blaster.
That's number one for you?
That's number one.
So,
because there's
all right, yeah.
there are options for the other machines we've thrown around. There are, even if they're slight options,
there is
no such thing as a Shot Blaster, including all of the shops that I visited that are some of our vendors that
have them and want us to still build one.
Yeah, they're like, hey, this is $25,000.
Yeah.
If you could build one for $5,000, that's just supplementary for smaller parts, so I don't have to fire up my giant machine, I would buy 3.
Yeah.
You know, there's one guy in particular, Brandon, that does our heat treat.
Yep.
If you're in Indiana and you need heat treat, definitely go to H&H Heat Treat.
Or if you're not in Indiana.
Or if you're not in Indiana, mail it to us. I'll drop it off. I don't care. Like,
for real.
Let's make that guy rich. He's awesome. He's the best. But I mentioned something about, we got a Shot Blaster and they look really easy to build. We're thinking about building one. And he was like, Francis, come take pictures.
Yeah.
You have no idea how
badly he needs a replacement.
How many people want this. Yeah. And he spent a lot of money on the 2 that he has, but he can't run certain parts in them.
Right.
And so he's just giving me this awesome feedback. And he's like, the guys that make these big ones will probably tell you how to make a smaller one. It's just not worth their time because they make the big ones.
Right.
And it's like, we're missing a gap. And I think we always do really well at finding a spot in the gap that's not filled in the market, not gap.
Yeah.
I think once we put these out, if we ever put them out, this is not solidified. Once we put these out, if we put them out, I think it's going to hit a gap in the market that people don't even realize.
Yeah.
And they're using a tumbler incorrectly for.
Right. Or sandblaster or whatever. Yeah. So for the kids at home, a Shot Blaster is,
I guess that's fair.
Is essentially a sandblaster. But instead of using compressed air, it uses like a fan blade to fling steel shot instead of sand at a workpiece. And it depending on the size of the shot, it'll either micropeen the surface or it at least will do a really, really, really good job of ripping all the forge scale off of something and leaving like a really satiny, it's not etched. It's not it's not sanded. It's not shiny, but like it still looks like forged steel, but
if you were to hand Scotch Brite something for 3 or 4 hours,
but non-directionally,
that's
no scratch lines.
That's the closest I can kind of describe it as Scotch Brite.
Yeah, it's like if you soaked something in acid overnight and then buffed it, so it didn't look chalky. Yeah, it takes all the forge scale off and it does it in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And the one that we have here is this old surplus one that was the smallest model they made. It's probably 2 feet wide, and the drum in it's probably
the propeller's probably
the impeller on it's this big. The drum is probably 16 inches round or whatever. It's got an expanded metal drum that sits there and rotates, so you don't have to sit there and run it like you do a sandblaster. Mm-hmm. You throw the parts in there. It's like a dishwasher.
Yeah.
You throw the parts in there, run it for a couple minutes, come back. Shut it off so that the fumes and the dust can clear with the dust extractor, and then pull your parts out and they look awesome.
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 Yeah.
So we definitely that's on the. I have a in my notes app that I use for the coal stuff. I have a the future, right, of harebrained projects, or this is stuff that we've done zero work on, but I would love to get into that someday. And Shot Blasters on there for sure. I think that we could have something that would be the end all be all finish for what people would want for the most part. I think we could do that reasonably compared to the price point of some of our other machines. Make it accessible.
If we could keep it under 10 grand, there's literally no option under 20,000.
Yeah.
So if we can keep it under 10 grand, and be a not even a comparable size, but 75% of the size of material holding. I
Yeah.
think we're
Yeah.
by far and away. And that's something that's a machine that requires little maintenance. You can run it in a commercial building. You can run it in your garage. I think the one we have
we can
runs
build
off
one that's single phase. That's totally fine.
I think ours runs off of
it's
a 3
220
horsepower. I don't think it's.
I think it's something
Is it
like
a
that.
5? I don't know.
3 or 5.
Yeah, but single phase, you can run it in your garage, and like you said, because it takes 90 seconds, even if it's loud, it's like,
Yeah.
and it is a little. You're shooting steel shot at a steel cage.
Yeah, it's not a
noise.
quiet machine, but
Yeah.
like you don't have to wear earplugs around
Right.
it.
Yeah, you can have a foot. It's probably as loud as our 5 horsepowers were before we submerged them.
Yeah.
Probably
yeah,
about-
that sounds
about the
right.
same.
That sounds about right.
But going on from that, I would say the second thing that I would want to look at is 120 ton presses.
yeah.
I think there's very
having an offering for that. That's
Very
not
doable,
a
reasonable
surplus thing. Yeah.
thing to do. And then after that, I would say rolling mill.
Yeah. Rolling mill is probably the number one thing I get asked for, and I'm totally on board. It's just a
Because
matter
you
of time.
live and die in the knife community.
And yeah, specifically Damascus. Right.
Yeah.
Rolling mill is definitely something that we really want to do. We've been wanting to do for a couple of years. It's just that, frankly, the hammer development's taken longer.
Yeah.
And that's been a higher priority for us. That would be huge. There's been whispers of a much, much, much heavier KA. Mm-hmm. Because from what most people don't like, yeah, it's a single blow hammer. It's a miniature drop hammer is what it is. Like it unloads all of its kinetic energy into the workpiece. So it would be nice to make one that's drop hammer sized.
There is literally no reason we can't do a 500-pound case.
Yeah, that would be super sick.
Yeah.
Like super sick.
The only reason we couldn't do it is genuinely just like
it's kind of horrifying.
Yeah, like wanting to actually fabricate it.
Yeah. Yeah. We would have to install a crane over our CNCs to be able to load parts for that, but that would be super sick. So like a super heavy KA, a rolling mill, obviously the coal hammer, like there's going to be a big brother to it at some point.
Yeah.
And then dies. Like I've got a list of die ideas a mile long. So that was a huge thing for me. Was kind of like, if I took everything that I have on my like to-do list, including like, oh, this would be nice to dive into this project someday. Like I'll be busy for 10 years.
Right.
With the stuff that we want to do. So as long as there's still blacksmiths out there willing to invest in, our harebrained ideas and bringing stuff to life, like we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Well, I'm getting kind of choppy there on the TV. Evan, did we overheat the camera?
Potentially.
Potentially. All right.
We love that.
So I had this whole exit that I was gonna say, but I'll make it brief since we're getting overheated here. Thank you for everybody that reached out and told us that you missed us. It is very encouraging to know that people want to keep up with us, that we feel like more than just a vendor in your life. We truly and genuinely want to be part of your community and what you're doing and listen and support you in what you're doing. Number 2, get involved. We will start having tag us in contests as far as, show us what you're making, show a maker that you've been obsessed with lately. We are going to have email things where maybe you email into us and we have legends of the community but answer those questions. And we are also going to be starting giving away t-shirts, hoodies, maybe some materials, stuff like that for involvement. And that's just because every bit of feedback that we get ends up being a good progression point for our company. So we want to be able to give back to you in that way and stop just fully taking advantage of it for free. So hit us up on Instagram, Coal Ironworks. Hit us up on YouTube, Coal Ironworks. On Facebook, Coal Ironworks. Twitter, Coal Ironworks. Do we have one of those other ones yet?
What are you talking about?
Social medias. Do we have one of the new ones that are coming out?
There's new social media. I should probably know about that. I don't think so.
Okay, we don't have any other social medias. We do post on those ones though. So get involved. Let us know what you're thinking. Share this episode. Let people know we're back and tell us what you want to hear over the next few episodes. Thanks a lot, guys. Can we get to the PN point? Can we get to the point where the song?
We already
pees?
did.
Oh, okay.
I forgot. They do make that. Blue Scott toilet paper.
Powder blue.
Yeah.
There it is.
I didn't know they had
expensive.
powder blue, but
Yeah.
I think my aunt, I don't know, somebody growing up always had pink toilet paper. Didn't know they made blue. I totally forgot that he does this at the end of the episode and that's going to be on the episode.